What's going on, everybody? How you doing on this fine Wednesday night in February? Cold February up here in the Northeast, up in Massachusetts, up in what would we call it? Franklin County, up towards the Berkshires. Actually, pretty cool stuff up here. It's we got about maybe I don't know six. We only got about 6 inches of snow right now, but we've had some really cold weather. So thanks for joining. This has been a real kind of a fun buildup over the last almost week to have some of these guys on. We'll just jump right into a couple of folks already in the chat. Mr. John Marks, how you doing? Good to see you, buddy. Robert Snyder, hello. Bones 4, what's going on, bud? Bent Tom. Jason Romero, how you guys doing? Kurt, what's happening, Kurt? Yeah, it is going to be a good show tonight. Let's see. Who else we got? Robert Snyder, what's up, buddy? Mr. Jerry Leica, Jimmy Ka, what's going on, dude? How you doing? That's right, Kurt. Ka. Crimson, what's happening? Les Bellin, hello. What's going on? I'm glad you guys are all jumping in. This is kind of a fun one. Like I said, it's been one that I've wanted to do for a while. I should say Barney and I wanted to do for a while. So I got the little guy. What do you think, dude? You're not going to be humping that blanket the whole time and doing the show, are you? He's got this blanket that he likes to, have fun with, but whatever. So thanks for coming. We had a great show last week. We had Donny Ward on last week, and Donny and I just geeked out on a bunch of stuff, and we'll do the same tonight. I want to give a little bit of a shout out to my friend Jeremy White for having me on his show yesterday. That was great. Jeremy reached out to me a couple of days ago, and he was like, "Hey, Rob," he's like, "Would you be interested in coming on my show?" And I have, in kind of preps for yours, and kind of build it up a little bit, and we chat some guitars for half hour. So I said, I'd be honored. So that was a lot of fun. It was nice to be on his show. So a lot of cool stuff coming. But without further ado, let's bring some folks in here. So first of all, let's bring in our good friend, Mr. Donny Ward.
I'm back. I haven't got up from my chair since last time.
Yeah, I know. It's been great. You and your dog, like me and mine, right? The only thing I did is I Dixon's shirt on.
Mine's asleep right now, so hopefully he chills out this time.
How you doing, Donny?
I'm good. How are you? I saw your show with Jeremy. That was great. It was good to see one of the OGs from this community get recognized and talk about his collection and how you got into this. So that was cool to see.
No, thank you. It was a lot of fun. It was it's hard to really hone in on particular guitars, but when you're doing something for 30 minutes, but Jeremy was like, "Hey, let's just talk about some cool stuff." So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Who else we got in here that wants to jump on tonight? We have the man, the legend, one of the guys that got me into doing this, that taught me so much of
me too.
What I know, what I don't know, I'm still learning. But we have Mr. Dimitri Deglis, otherwise known as Jimmy on the forums, the VH forums. This guy is a legend, and him and I have been friends for a long time. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing great.
I appreciate it.
Legend is an understatement. This guy is responsible for the start of this whole tracking down the history of Vince gear. Well, I guess the Japanese were responsible for starting that, but he took it to the next level for sure. So thank you.
Well,
Jimmy, were you on Unchained World back in the mid '90s? That was
yes.
Then so yeah. I think that's where you and I met, and then you really took it to town with the VH Lynx. That was when things really exploded.
Yeah, I mean, but like you, I have to give full credit to Scott Smith and Jerry Leica for getting me in. So there's always somebody that precedes you.
I mean, Scott, Jerry, yourself, we're basically the three heavyweights that. I was like a kid in a candy store. I came in, I didn't know anything. I mean, I knew, all these striped guitars. I'm going to start building these things, and I knew a little bit, about the Frankenstrat and the 5150, and all of a sudden I'm just getting inundated with all this knowledge, and you guys were awesome. It's been such a fun ride. You and I have been huge fans of the Music Man EX. We've been big fans of that.
I still get that guitar too, of course. I'll never get rid of it.
Oh, is that the one you got from me, or?
Yeah, this is the one that I got from you.
Yeah, yeah.
Is
Great guitar.
this guitar is accurate, and everybody used to think that these EXs were somehow inferior to the actual product, but in my opinion, they're not. It's actual Music Man parts that were assembled in Japan, so everything is on par. I mean, maybe the top is Donnie probably knows more about that than I do, but maybe the top's a little bit thinner or not as nice, but everything else is exactly the same.
Real quick, what I found out was some of the earlier EXs made by High-End Guitars, which was one of the main companies that was putting these things together. They actually were one of the companies that had some of the leftover bodies from Music Man, and they used them. And when they ran out, it was so hard to find book match. And Donnie, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was so hard to find book match maple top. So what they did is they had a maple top over the basswood, and then they just put a veneer film over it. So it's still a maple cap,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's up.
But everything is, the pickups, everything is fine. I love
They're
that.
great guitars, and people finally caught on to them because now the prices are just
when you it's the same thing we talked about this earlier. It's the same thing that happened with the Destroyers. When the Ibanez got too expensive, people realized the Greco is basically the same product, just a different distributor. So, and the Aria even. So they just kind of, when the price gets too high for the one product, you go to the next best thing and realize it was actually great all along.
Barney, somebody's at the door. Who you got? Oh, we got one more person that wants to come in here. Gosh, we forgot about this guy. I don't know how we forgot about him. He's a major heavyweight, and you guys all know who this is. We have Mr. Michael McGuire from Period Correct Guitar Parts. This guy is also a legend and has just absolutely exploded the market of parts for Van Halen guitars that none of us in a million years, Jimmy, you and I go way back. We never thought we'd be seeing, these parts. I mean, people making FR25s and just totally. Took it to another level. How are you doing, Mike?
Doing good. Good to see you guys. Good to see you, Rob and Donnie and Dimitri. We've never really met face to face, and
we've talked we've texted before, but it's great to find you.
Good to see you.
Thanks for jumping
in. Hi guys on the forum and the everybody on the chat. So it's good to see everybody.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. This is going to be a fun one. We're gonna rip for a couple hours and have a lot of fun. We're gonna get sidetracked. We're gonna joke. We're gonna geek out on stuff that you guys have been talking about. This show has been one of the most anticipated shows that I've seen. The messages I've been getting over the last few days, it's been crazy. Everybody's looking forward to this one, and because we got you guys on, and you guys are just a mountain of knowledge. We got builders, we got collectors, we got painters. You guys have done everything, and I've learned an incredible amount from all of you. And that goes for you too, Mike. I mean, I haven't known you for more than maybe, 5 years or so, but 5-6 years, but it's been a mountain of knowledge and stuff, information that you guys have put out. Real quick, Jerry is here. I think we did say hi to Jerry real quick before. How you doing, buddy? Jerry is also one of the heavyweight legends that has taken this to another level over the years. I want to get Jerry on the show one day, but Jerry does not like to be on camera. He's like, I'm not doing it. But
we'll get him.
We will, yeah. We'll get him. We're gonna get that dude on. Clayton James Hicks, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you. Dwight Bailey, how are you? Bent Tom. Let's see, who else have I missed? I think we got everybody. And I know we're gonna get some folks that are gonna R2R3, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you. And I know we're gonna get some folks that are gonna jump in. We're gonna do the best we can to answer some questions when we can, but we got a lot of stuff to go through. So we'll do the best we can, and if we can get to a question, certainly. Granola 2467, Lou, good to see you. Thank you guys for jumping in. Really appreciate it. Andy Carson. So, Donnie, you and I did a show last week, and we had this kind of crazy idea at the end, like, hey, let's put something even bigger together next week. So, how did you get into the whole Van Halen guitar building, like collecting? What got you into actually building bodies and necks and all that stuff. And you're a painter too.
Yeah, well, I'm more of a builder than a painter, but I can paint. I'm dangerous with it, but I can do it. Like a lot of guys, I was inspired by Ed and what he did, not only with the music that he played and wrote, but what he did for guitars. As haphazard as it may have been, it was important, and it changed the way guitars are built. Now I'm a lot younger, of course, so my story is more or less getting into Van Halen in the mid 2000s. As a young guitar player, I must have been 12 years old, hearing that stuff. And you guys were probably that young too, but obviously this happened with me much later. And what really inspired me to look into putting guitars together, obviously this far precedes making bodies and necks, but buying kits and putting guitars together, was seeing that video with Matt Bruck, Ed, and Chip Ellis of the Master Build. And there's just some allure of that video that was like, this is something different. This isn't just an amazing guitar player who uses stock instruments to come up with his music. This is someone who's really in touch with what he's playing and how he's involved in getting the instrument to where it is so that it can accommodate his music. So that was an early inspiration for me. And early on, I was buying bodies from eBay. I mean, this is before I even knew about Musicraft and all that. So, cheap Mighty Mike necks and bodies. I don't know who made them from eBay. Then I kind of graduated to Musicraft builds when I, as a young kid, could afford that. Save up Christmas money or whatever and buy a Musicraft kit. And I'm the type, and I feel like Mike is the same way. When we want something and there's no option to get it exactly correct, all you can do is do it yourself.
Yeah.
You research and you figure out all the dimensions and the specs, and then you conceptualize it before you ever actually make it. So I had ideas of guitar builds way before I ever cut a body or a neck myself. I was doing drawings in my case in CAD and other digital planning softwares, and slowly but surely you take a stab at a body or you take a stab at a neck, and maybe it doesn't work out great the first time, but you learn something, and over many repetitions and a lot of time, you kind of figure out one thing and then move on to the next thing. So it's just basically, I kind of look at it as what drove Ed to be as great as he was. It was constantly chasing something that's one step ahead of you, and you kind of chip away at it, and you get little bits of progress each time. But I'm grateful to this community and to what Ed did, because it's evergreen. I always tell people this. I can make an accurate replica body or a neck, whatever, a product, whether it's for my own collection or I sell it, and then 2 years later something new comes out and I have to make a revision. Some people would look at that as a defeat, like it wasn't accurate the first time I did it. But for me, I look at it like this thing keeps growing, and it allows us to get closer and closer to true accuracy every time. And that's just talking for one product. It could be a Frank neck, it could be a 5150 neck, or whatever it is. But then there's always that other one that you haven't tried yet. Well, what about that one guitar I used as a backup in 1981 or whatever? And then you get things like my cat guitar coming into existence. So to wrap up my story, I basically was just like all of you, I'm sure, inspired by the depth that this community has. And you constantly just chip away at it and get closer and closer,
Yeah. Mike, Donnie, I want my money back for that neck I bought off you 3 years ago because it's changed.
So I've had people, not in a negative way, but people like, oh, there's a revision, we want to make it more accurate. Okay, well, I'm going to sell mine and buy a new one. And thank God for guys like that, because it keeps money.
Yeah, I know.
It keeps my lights on,
Well, that's what keeps us all going. It's so funny, John. You and I were talking about that last week. It's just, that's what keeps us going. We have Justin Konanovich in the chat. How you doing, Justin? There's another massive name in the painting and the building community and the Van Halen pages. He's just another great guy that has just a mountain of knowledge. He says, here because of Dimitri telling me about this. I got a drink in my hand, toes in the heater, and all I need is another McGuire FRT5. Yeah, we see what you did there, dude. Beautiful Floyds. Yes, they are. But guitar geology. What's up, dude? How you doing, Stan?
Jim.
Robbie,
Hey, Jim.
Hey,
Yeah, how you doing, Jim?
Yeah. Interesting concept, the way of looking at it. Robbie Stingle, a gentleman who worked for Kramer for back in the day. I mean, there's nobody, you Can't get any closer to the horse's mouth than that. How you doing,
I
Rob?
gotta ask Robbie some questions sometime. If you could connect with me on Facebook, I got some questions about something I'm working on. If you don't mind.
Cool. Jimmy,
Yeah,
what got you into all of this way back in 1923? We're the old dudes, by the way. We're the old senseis. You and I, the martial arts old guys.
yeah. I think like my story is very similar to a lot of people. I think the first time I heard, of course, Van Halen one, my mind was just blown. And I remember the exact time when I was actually in Europe. I was in Belgium. My father had rented a car, and they were playing a Dutch radio station, and Running with the Devil came on. It's the first time I ever heard it. And when I heard those harmonics, at the time I was really into Jimi Hendrix. I wasn't really playing guitar yet, but this just took me to a different place. And then from there, I actually got a hold of the album, and when I saw Ed's guitar on there, black and white with the stripes on it, I had to find out what that was all about. I got into the whole Charvel thing. There was one music store that was not too far away from where I lived in New York at the time. I think Tommy Coletti has talked about this many times, Grayson's Music Stop. And they had a couple of Charvels, and those things were like the rarest things in the world. And I got to play it, and that was it. That's what I wanted. But of course, they were unaffordable, and they were impossible to get at the time. You're talking like 1979, 1980. Very difficult to get. So, and then I had some friends who were great guitar players. A guy named Vito Minelli, who used to play in a cover band called WDFA. And they did mostly Van Halen stuff, but he was the first time I saw how things were done. The Mean Street Intro, all these other things that were just, so you couldn't figure it out at the time. We had no internet, right?
Yeah.
You and I mean, YouTube was non-existent. I mean, you guys, Donny, you don't know how easy you and the people after you have it now.
I know, dude.
What you want, you take this device, you ask questions, it gives you an instant answer. These things weren't. I had to rely on magazines that were just showing the guitar from one angle. I mean, everybody can relate to all that. So slowly but surely I got into it, and now I can't even get out of it because I'm so deep. I look around this room, man. You guys can't see it because I can't swing this desktop around, but I must have like 60 guitars with all kinds of stuff. These two guys here, this guy and this guy, are very dangerous because they can make me or make us anything they want, right?
Yeah. I
call up Donny, I go, listen, I'm thinking about this. 2 seconds later, he's got it in CAD. He rolls it out. Mike, I ask him hey, do you have this part? Yeah, I got it somewhere in my PX. I'll go get it. And then
Donny's dangerous. He built me a neck today. Started it and completed it. Shipping tomorrow. I'm like, dude.
And that happens all the time. And that used to happen with Chris too. It's dangerous to our wallets. We know that, right? But we support the both of you. But I mean, what a time to be into Van Halen guitars where you can actually create almost exact replicas of what used to be. And before it was impossible. You'd get the best approximation. But I built quite a few of the replicas, and then when we got into this community where guys like Nick the Kid, painted a lot of some of the Van Halen guitars that I had. I used to do a lot of spray painting when I was back in New York, but now that I'm in Florida, the humidity has just made it so impossible. I'd have to have a controlled environment to do it, and if I'm doing that, I might as well just do it the right way and not use spray cans anymore. But it's impossible to do with the humidity.
Yeah.
So I've kind of like retired on the Van Halen side. Most of the stuff I do now is of course stuff like this. These tribute guitars, but it's this is actually the Hiram Bullock Strat, with the Eddie Van Halen features. But I have other guitars like that are like Stevie Ray Vaughan and a bunch of other stuff. I mean, Scott Smith calls them Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne Frankies. The plainclothes Frankies.
Yeah.
So, I have quite a few of those. Some people like that, some people don't. But apparently EVH stole my idea because here you go. This is
seriously, right?
It's the
That's the exact one that I want, Jimmy. I want to get one of those.
Here's one that I did many years ago. I mean, it's kind of weird, right? So I'm going to talk to Wolfgang about it.
Call up Maddie, see what he has to say about it.
Yeah, he'll say nothing.
Yeah, right.
Hey, Jimmy, you said it's so hard to get out of this. It's too late for us. But what did Darth Vader say to Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi? It is too late for me, my son. That's how I feel. It's too late. We can't get out of this. We're trapped, you know.
Yeah.
But Fruitcake Tony, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for jumping in. Mr. McGuire, what's your deal? How'd you get into this mess?
Oh, jeez. Well, I've always played guitar, so I've always had a guitar. And then what got me into Van Halen was I was really into Guns N' Roses, late 96, 97, right around there. And then my dad goes, well, he's not as good as Eddie Van Halen. And then I started listening. I'm like, you know what? I think you're right. And that's what got me into Van Halen. I started, I was always around. My dad had Jump on his jukebox and, still does. So, I've always been around Van Halen, but the guitar part of it was around 97-ish. And I remember going to a guitar store here in Vegas. I just moved from Southern California. And I wanted a Wolfgang because I was seeing all the advertisements, and it's maybe 98, 99. And so I finally got one. I'm looking on the wall. I see this Cherry Sunburst Wolfgang. And I'm going, what is the deal with that tremolo? I had no idea what it was. He's like, well, you pull this thing out and it'll drop the tuning down. And, I'm like, oh, so you go from standard tuning to half a step down and all the strings. That's cool because, Van Halen, famously went, from half step down, and then with Sammy, they went, standard tuning. So it's kind of cool. He's like, no, it doesn't work that way. It's different. So I'm like, okay. It was just a completely odd looking thing to me. And then so I finally got the guitar, and I've been Floyded up ever since, with all the different guitars. And actually, 25 something years ago, Rob and I had first met. I don't know how, because the internet was still kind of weird, with the forums, and I don't know how it happened, but I ended up buying a Frankenstrat from you. It was my first Van Halen striped guitar. It had the
that's the one that I painted too. I think.
Yeah, I think so. It had the hockey stick headstock, so it was like the Feels So Good video one.
Yeah.
On there. And thankfully, it had a T-top Gibson humbucker in it. Thank you very much.
Back when all out.
Yeah.
That was thanks to Scott, actually, on that one. Scott.
Oh, yeah. So then it just snowballed from there. So I started putting guitars together. eBay was great, back then. So there was a lot of parts available. So I got a Kramer neck, patent pending. I sanded the whole finish off because I wanted it oiled, and then, bought a body, put it together. So it kind of happened naturally, kind of how Eddie, just started putting things together. And then slowly they started getting stripes on them. And, I really don't have that many right now. I got loads of bodies and necks from Donny and others and everything. And I haven't put anything together. I tried during COVID. That's the last time I tried to get something going. And, the Met picks of the Frankenstrat were huge, so that really got me inspired to do it again. And then I wanted to do a 5150 and wanted to find that Floyd that was on it and couldn't. Yeah. And I kept hearing of, there might be a run of these to get them. And so I just started looking, and I got an FRT3 in the meantime, met Darren, met up with you guys again. And then it kind of turned to, well, I found this part. That's kind of cool. Hey, I need this. I found the Facebook groups, Yeah. That was really, really cool because everybody was in that, and it was, a community. And I had never really, with the older forums, Halen, I think it was Halen.com and the Metro Amp forums. Those were really cool, but they kind of stopped. And then the Facebook groups started up again. And so it was really cool to kind of reconnect with you, and and I met some great guys, Jerry, Leica. Yeah. I still haven't really talked to Scott Smith, but those are the three guys that I knew. Yeah. It was Rob, Jerry, and Scott.
There's another guy too named Richard Armstrong who I still talk to today. Jimmy,
I don't remember heard of him.
He's up in British Columbia. He's got probably a collection almost as big as Scott's.
Wow.
You would know he's been in the game forever. He was back in those days too, and he'll message me. As a matter of fact, he's watched a couple of my shows. I wouldn't be doubted if he jumped in tonight. But The Halen.com, Mike, who was the guy? Because I was on that site all the time, and I had a bunch of my stuff on there too.
Andre.
Who was had the Frankenstrat? It was like the best one anybody ever had.
Oh,
Quite.
Steve Sandy.
Yes, yeah. I remember then it was just like, this is all before the Met too. And I mean, I remember looking at his stuff and I'm like, wow, this guy is like insane. Like,
yeah, he was insane. He still is.
13 years later, that's still probably the best Frank ever made.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen his guitar a few times, and it's just still pretty impressive. There's even new guys coming out now that are really impressive. That are just you never heard of. They're not really active in the forum. All of a sudden, hey, check this out. You're just like, whoa, this is gonna be good.
Yeah, I got a guy now. Actually, he's in the chat. He's putting together his first replica of anything. First guitar he's ever put together, and it's up there. I mean, it's got to be one of the best I've seen. And if I could, real quick, just show it off. I got some pictures of it because it really, it's blowing my mind. All right, I'm pulling it up now, Rob. There we go. So this is this guy. This is the first guitar that he's ever painted. First replica he's ever done. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, is that Chris?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Chris Smith. Yeah, I'm putting a shark kit together for him right now. That's going to be his next stab. So we'll see how he does on that. But I mean, look at this thing.
Yeah, that is absolutely incredible. And for a first build,
right,
almost unheard of. I mean, yeah, that's impressive. That guy's got quite a future.
Yes.
But not only that, it's like you can paint it and stripe it, but he's got the details down, and it's like he's been doing it for years and years and years. I don't know. I haven't talked to him. I don't know the story, but it took a long time for even me to get certain things, and this, he's coming out and doing it. It's like, wow, that's very, very impressive.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I know you guys do too, Donnie and Mike and Jimmy. I mean, there's so many more of us that have been doing this for so long that, I get so many messages on a daily basis. I even have to go into my, message requests sometimes, and it's like, oh my gosh, I got like 6 messages from people, that have been asking me stuff, hey Rob, how do I get into this? What do I do with this? What do I do with this? And and I try to refer them to all the main sources. Most people want to build a 5150. Most people want to build a Frankenstrat. So Obviously, the usual suspects. I give them the names, of Scott and Musicraft and Locke and there's K&E. The list just goes on and on and on and on. And then where to get the parts? Period correct. Donnie. Whatever. It's just it's amazing to, and I think Jimmy, you brought this up too, and I've said this many times before. I got into it in the mid '90s, and the internet had just kind of come out, and we were on the old dial-up. But there wasn't as much stuff on the internet. We had Unchained World, we had, I think Halen might have come out around that time, and there was a few other sites, but we still didn't have all those intricate pictures because people hadn't uploaded them yet. So we were still going off of Circus magazines and Hit Parader and Guitar World, and then the Young Guitar. Then I found out about Young Guitar Mags, and it was like, oh, that's what the back of the Bumblebee looks like. Nobody even knew. Yeah. Totally. And that raised the bar because the Japanese are, and I mean this in a very positive way, they're gearheads. Yes. They don't want to just hear about the song or the band. They want to dig in on the guitars. And to me,
they document it and take they get close and, you ever seen in American magazines, Eddie's pedal board, that close or anything like that.
Back in '78, no less.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good stuff, and it's nice. I say this, we had to work to find this stuff, and that's and to this day, I'm still like a kid in a candy store. I'm still like, whoa, there's this new picture, I haven't seen that, or whoa, that's that. I think Jerry sent me a picture of I'd never seen last week when Donnie and I were doing the show of Ed from '82. It shows a picture of the back of him. He was playing the Frankenstrat with the gold FRT4, the prototype. And it showed a picture of his nasty cordless taped on his strap. And I'm like, whoa, that's, I hadn't seen that. I've been searching for one of those forever. And Mike, I know you're working on little.
You're gonna have to still keep looking for a little while.
Yeah, I know, but it's so much fun to be able to help people out. I love being able to, hey, do this, do this, do this. Not only because it helps them out, it also gives all you folks more business. And there's a bunch of guys out there that Craig, CHS Custom Guitars. He does amazing paint jobs and factory finish. He's done a bunch of my work too. Matt Anthony, he's finishing up my 5150 right now. Like I said earlier, Justin, he's amazing. Chris Hubbard, who's back in the game again. I mean, it's just there's so many folks. Nick Amendola, the kid. I mean, these guys are they're all part of this huge group. And I always say it all the time. I'm glad I do my best to keep everybody tight. And I know there's adversity out there between folks over time. I mean, it's inevitable to a certain extent. And I always want to keep the group a community. I do the best I can to kind of, give everybody a piece of the pie, so to speak, of, hey, there's more than enough work out there for everybody,
I mean, at the end of the day, we're all just kind of in this very small niche anyway. So we do better sticking together and giving each other props and work and help than to make these little subgroups, because then we're already dealing with a small group of people who are this crazy to get all these guitars. So
yeah, I know, and it's like I said, there's just every other day, so to speak, there's something new coming out that I haven't seen, or a piece of information that I didn't know, or a new picture of a particular guitar. I mean, Donny, I'm looking at my yellow Kramer double neck up there on the wall now. And, all those years I thought that the 12 string was a Schaller Badass bridge. And I knew the bottom was a Rockinger. And Donny actually contacts the people and says, no, that was, Paul didn't even know, I think he said, it's not a Schaller Badass. It's actually a Rockinger.
Yeah, Paul told me, I was talking to Paul about something unrelated a lot. We were on the phone a lot. And I've had plans for a double neck for myself for years, but getting the aluminum neck and everything just right is a big ask. But in the meantime, I was looking at that bridge, and I asked Paul, because I had heard, of course, from you and from others that it was a Badass, or a Schaller version of the Badass, the 455. And Paul's like, yeah, what he told me is, he said, I don't remember exactly, but whatever it was, it has to be a Schaller, because that's all we were using. Schaller tuners, Schaller, everything. So I was like, okay. I looked into it, and the Schaller, long story short, there is a Schaller on the red, white, and black double neck, but not the yellow and black one. And that one on the yellow and black one just got me thinking. And I was actually talking to Chris Gill about it, just kicking some ideas around. Not even thinking the fact that Chris had a hand in those high-res photos of Ed's guitars in 2013 for a Guitar Aficionado. And I was like, yeah, what do you think? You think that could be a Rockinger? Since, of course, the other bridge is a Rockinger. He said, I don't know, maybe. But here's Dieter Goldsdorf's email if you want to ask him. So I drew up like a mock-up of what I thought it looked like and the specs and dimensions, and sent it to Dieter, and he got back to me like, this guy in Germany, who's got to be in his 70s or 80s now, gets back to me 15 minutes later. He said, thank you for your kind message. Yes, we made this bridge. That was a Rockinger product. Muller and Son was the manufacturer that did the milling. So here's their contact info. So it's really cool that you can still, to this day, you can go and contact these people. Well, first of all, it started from me talking to Paul Unkert. So that's just, that's confirmation in itself, that you can go back to these original guys and talk to them and, ask directly from them and piece together the puzzle. So it's cool.
Yeah, it is. It's great stuff. And it's
sometimes you don't even think about doing that though, right? It's like you can do that, but you just don't think of doing it, or whatever. I've done that a few times. I've been very surprised how they want to talk sometimes, and they're pretty open, and maybe their memory isn't the best of what was going on back in the day, but
it helps, getting their perspective.
Yeah.
Their memory can help us to piece together what the truth is.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, and the Rockinger, we're talking about Rockingers, and it's hard to find those bridges. There's not a lot of folks that actually have guitars that actually have the Rockinger, and I know, this is one that I got from Tommy Coletti at the Music Zoo. I've showed this guitar a few times. Mm-hmm. It's it's got the lawsuit headstock, and it's just a great guitar. is the Rockinger a bridge that I would want to play, on a daily basis? No. I mean, I prefer a Floyd, but I have found that while they're not, I mean, I can totally see why Ed went with Floyd, but they are collectible. They are cool. They have their own personality. And I found that if you set them up the right way, you can actually, they're actually pretty manageable. I know, Donnie, you and I have talked a little bit about it because I know you have one too, but you're not going to bury the bar a million times like a Floyd and be that perfectly in tune. But if you do set them up the right way, I found that they will perform.
You can get away with it. Is how I would.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're a fun one. I know, Mike, you've actually had a few of Rockinger parts, pieces of Rockinger parts on your site from time to time. How do you acquire stuff like that? I mean, what's your search like? I mean, not necessarily the exact details, but how do you come across a lot of this rare stuff, the real stuff, not necessarily the stuff that you made?
Yeah, sometimes by accident. Somebody will have a neck or something, and then I'll just ask if they have any more parts to it or something, and sometimes they'll say yes, sometimes they'll say no. But the Rockinger stuff kind of, I started collecting Floyds. My manager was Floyds, and the good rare stuff kind of settled down. So I was like, well, maybe I'll get some Rockingers. I'll find a Rockinger here and there, and I've never played one. I was afraid to. There was one at a guitar shop, and I was like, I'm afraid to pull this thing down. I'm going to break it. To be honest with you, so I've never actually played one.
Was it the Star at Ed Roman's?
Yeah, I don't know which one it was. It was something. Might have been that, but I was like, man, this thing's squeaking and squealing. But yeah, I have a couple of them. I like to keep the good ones, and if I have extra parts, I'll try to sell them out there. But it's one of those things that you either need them to replace on your original Kramer or whatever guitar you have on them. The saddles tend to be a little, brittle, and so it's always good to have parts extra. So usually I'm looking for something else, and it just comes with either a bigger haul or something. That's how I got a lot of this stuff. I got boxes and boxes of stuff that came with one piece that I wanted, but there was 20 other other stuff in there, and I don't know what to do with it all. But yeah, I got some parts here and there, and I think Donnie might have some parts that actually need a couple things from him too. So it's good going back and forth, and when you got the right stuff and you got the guy that's as good as Donnie with certain parts, let's get them going.
Mike got these for me. I've been looking for years.
Oh, the gold.
Treble side gold double tabs.
Yeah.
I ended up paying $600 for my set for my Shark after all years and years and years of looking for them. I finally found a set back a year and a half ago, and I did my little trick. My little trick is some of you guys know, you just you get the right tuner, a shallow or whatever, and then you take an old tuner, this chrome or gold, whatever, and you take a pair of pliers and you very carefully snip the tab off, and you grind it down so it's nice and smooth. I'm telling all my little secrets. And then you butt it up against where it goes. You drill a little pile of hole with screw in there, and it looks like it looks like a double tab. And I did that for years, and then finally there's this guy on eBay had the real ones, and he wanted $580 something for it. I'm like, oh, gosh, come on, dude, And I made a couple offers, and he didn't respond. And the only thing that allowed it is when I sold my condo and I moved up to my wife's place where I live now, where she was living. I was like, hey, I think I got an extra six. I'm getting those damn things. And that is a sickness, man. I'll tell you.
Yes.
I ended up getting them. And then a month later, then Mike's got them on his site. I'm like, come on, it's crazy.
Sometimes you just get lucky and they're, they'll start coming out of the woodwork every, couple of weeks or something. And then they'll dry up and you won't find them for, a couple of years.
It's crazy how that works, isn't it? Like, exactly. You won't see stuff for years, and all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom.
Well, there's old dealers and guys who would put guitars together back then. You have boxes and boxes of this shit. They don't realize that it's sought after or valuable. And then when it clicks to that one guy, a bunch will get out. So sell his whole box of shit.
Yeah. Funny, Robbie Stingle says Edward hated everybody for Rockinger. You couldn't even mention the man's name. And it's funny. We all know that Ed had some guitars with Rockingers back in that time. The multi-pate guitar had it. There's pictures of him with a white, guitar, and then obviously the yellow double neck had it. But it's funny, if you listen to the interviews specifically with Jazz Overett and with Steve Rosen, a lot of us know Steve, and it's interesting. You'll never hear him mention Rockinger ever. You'll hear him mention Mighty Might. You'll hear him mention that. I don't really like that brass kind of stuff. He'll mention that, but he'll never mention the name Rockinger. And in the 1982 interview with Jazz, he talks specifically about Floyd Rose. Then he talks about the yellow double neck guitar that, Donnie and I have. And he says, yeah, Kramer just made me this new guitar and da-da-da-da. Then he goes right in talking about Floyd Rose. Does not mention Rockinger. And it's interesting that, Robbie said that because Mike, you get into, I think it was you had a pretty good section on the Rockinger on the Floyd Rose page, or maybe that was Darren, some of our other folks. And that is just an amazing page. We'll chat about that after. I'm still still miffed by that page. But the whole Rockinger situation, from what I've read, it was such a short-lived thing. And I have a thing up there on the wall, that actually came with this guitar. Tommy set me up with it, the actual flyer, or whatever you want to call it, Rockinger, the Edward Van Halen tremolo. And they thought they had the deal. They thought they had it. And then all of a sudden, boom, Floyd came out or came around. And then it was just so interesting how that just kind of got shuffled aside. But if you look at it, it makes a lot of sense, because Ed was just like, nah, I don't want this,
I don't think he was serious about getting that thing. I don't know what it was, but I think maybe they, Rockinger made some sort of, preemptive deal or something with Kramer. But there was no way Eddie was going with Rockinger at all. He was already using Floyd's. Maybe there was some other company that was trying to get an exclusive license with them, like Kramer did or something. But yeah, it was just a weird kind of thing. But who knows what that was really all about. Robbie was saying, Floyd and Edward were as thick as thieves. They were always working back and forth. I think because Ed was on the road for months at a time, he would say, Floyd, but this is cool. I need to have this, and then it just took months to get everything together, and especially with the fine tuners, the FRT4. It was like, yeah, it's great, and who knows how much input the Fernandez had in it too. They might have, they were also working with Floyd, so there was a big circle of, that's the four. So there was a big delay in getting things done, but once they did, I think it was all for the best, obviously.
Yeah. I've always thought that the Rockinger having fine tuners is what drew Ed, because he had his first Kramer right around the time, or maybe just before the FRT4 prototypes would have been made. So that was my feeling with, in fact, not just to the tremolo, but to Kramer in general. It was the fact that he had been hounding Floyd to put fine tuners on the thing.
Yeah. And
he finds a guitar that has a locking trem with fine tuners. It's like, oh, well, that's exactly what I was looking for. But obviously, the Rockinger is a far inferior tremolo to what Floyd ended up with.
That might have been just a little kick in the ass to Floyd too. It's like, hey, if you don't get this going, I'm going to go to these guys.
Yeah, that's pretty much what. Yeah, that's the feeling I get. And of course, Floyd came around, and it's the best double locking trem to this day. So they got something right.
Yeah, and these fine tuners are. I tell you, sometimes they're hard to turn. And they're flathead.
One of the Kramers that I had originally was a Kramer Special with a cream pickup, and it had a Rockinger on it. And the biggest problem with it was that the fact that the locking nut was behind the nut. Right. It was very, very small, Allen wrenches that would go in there. I remember constantly snapping like the G or the E or the B strings. Yeah. And then the fine tuners were hard to do. Like the only way you could get it to turn for me was I used to have to insert the pick into it and then turn it.
Mm-hmm.
It's also at a really bad location, right? Because you can't really get the right angle to turn it.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it really hard. It ultimately, like the whale tails and everything else, put it right where it should be. And then some other companies made improvements on that by varying the angle and everything else. But yeah, that was the biggest problem with it for me. I would always break the strings, when I would lock it down. I would just furiously,
very, very finicky. You had to get just the right amount of tension to lock it, but not too much. Why don't we jump back then, talking about Ed and Floyd's? Why don't we, and Mike can lead the way here. Why don't we go and start talking about how Ed actually got involved with Floyd? It's a very interesting story, which we touched on last show, with Randy Hansen and Lynn Ellsworth and Floyd Rose back in '79.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to touch off on what Dimitri was talking about too. The main part of the Floyd Rose tremolo system is the nut and where it's located, because as you can, that was the patent, that was the idea right there. Because you can still have a regular trem as long as it's non-locking trem, but as long as the nut is locking right there at that nut, that's the moneymaker right there. Yeah. So everybody try to get around that by they can make their own Floyds, but it always had to be behind the nut. So getting around the patent was tough for competitors. But yeah, so the last show, Donny was talking about, Lynn Ellsworth was a very integral part of, Ed and Floyd Rose meeting. I think they mentioned the stories and stuff like that. But as far as I know, as far as I think anybody knows, the first guitar that Ed had a Floyd Rose on was the Bumblebee. And what number that was manufactured, I don't know. Number 2, number 3, Randy Hansen from there's the and it was unplated, I think, or if it was plated, it was very, very thin and just peeled off. Very early on, Ed and had got one, and then
I've always felt that it was unplated, and the reason being that he needed it now, and he was in Seattle for a couple of days. So
and he doesn't care. He liked the funky stuff.
Exactly.
He didn't care. And Floyd was probably like, "Well, it's not ready yet. I gotta have it chromed." And I was like, "I don't care. What does it matter?
Just make it like that."
Yeah, because depending on how good the chrome was, it could have chipped off easily. But I don't think it was chipping off. I think it was just gradually getting deterioration and black from the elements and stuff. But and Donnie knows probably more the time frame of when that was. Was it 78? Dimitri probably knows too. That's him. That's Eddie and Randy.
Yeah. That's the whiskey.
Is that when Randy was supposedly or Floyd stepped on the bar when it was on the ground and said, "Look, it's going to spaghetti and coming back." Yeah. I think that's what sold Ed was, hey, what if I told you I have a tremolo that you can, pull all the strings down and it like spaghetti and bring it back and it goes out of tune. That was like, oh, duh, of course.
Yeah.
And recently now, Bizarre Guitar, in Reno. That's where Floyd was from. I think he was doing some mold designs, or he was building molds for castings and stuff. And I can't remember his name, the owner, but Bizarre Guitar was installing a lot of these early Floyds, and maybe 20 or 30 of them. But he was getting directly from Floyd. They were all friends. I think Floyd and him were even in a band or something together, and so there's a lot of cool things early on. And it was still unknown. So if you're in the know or a musician, and they're like, hey, I got those are only the guys that really got them.
Yeah.
And I wish I could tell you how many he made. Somebody says 20, 30 garage made. I don't really know what that means. Did he personally make them, or did he have somebody else make them? Nobody's really going to know. So I personally think there's more than that of the FRT1 style. Not much more, but a little more than that, just from how many I've seen. But they're definitely rare. And he only really would have made those from 78, 79. I can't imagine him making too much more than that. But yeah, that's kind of going through the FRT1s. And Ed obviously had a few. He had them on the circles and the Rude, I think. There's that picture of him in the bedroom with a couple of them on there. And obviously the guy had it, the Star. So Ed personally had probably 6.
Yeah.
You know,
I've always felt that the Floyd that ended up on the Frank was the one that started on the Star, because it would have been the one that he was using at the time, and when he jumped to put one on the Frank, he probably just swapped it right over.
it could have been. I think Ed treated the Frankenstrat kind of like how he did till he died. He would test them on other guitars, test them on the road, and then if he liked it, boom, it goes on the Frankenstrat, and then becomes a permanent
Yep.
thing on there.
And the same thing with the whale tail prototype on the Rasta being the test bed for that going into production.
Yeah, you don't mess with your baby until until it's ready to go.
Yep.
Yeah. What was the story, Mike, on so the FRT1 came out for that period of time? There was a jump between FRT2 and 3. And you don't really hear a lot about FRT2.
Well, FRT is technically a Fernandez designation. I think this, if the original Floyd Rose was just called the Rose tremolo. If it had a sticker on it, just said Rose tremolo. There was no patent yet. So FRT was just a Japanese. Very early on too, probably 79 or 80. This is on Darren's site, vintagefloydrose.com, where they talk about Floyd meeting with Fernandez guys, and I think Fernandez had an FRT1 style that they had made, and Floyd was like, okay, well, let's make a deal, and you're going to produce these for me, and then shortly after that, they probably the FRT2 was never an official Floyd Rose made product that I know of that he had anything to do with it, because it was string through. So his whole thing was, listen, this is supposed to be locking. That's the essence of the tremolo. I don't want to probably a string through. You guys can make it if you want, but so it became a kind of a budget version. And then the FRT3 is basically an FRT1, but now it became more of a production thing. We're making more of these, so let's start making the saddles. Let's start making more of them. So they went into casting. I believe Floyd might have made the molds, because that's what he was doing in Reno. So he might have actually made the molds for the saddles. So that was really the only difference. And if you ask the guys that don't know about the Fernandez Japanese stuff, they think the FRT3 is technically the FRT2, because that's the second model that they know of. So So when you're talking Floyds, it gets a little confusing, especially when you use FRT, because you're using it for the American and the Japanese-made Floyds.
Right.
But FRT2, I've never seen Eddie play them. I've never seen Eddie play an FRT3 either, to be honest with you.
Yep.
It's hard to tell because they're so similar.
Yeah, and
they're very similar, and they could look the same depending on the flash.
Well, have you seen the photo of Ed playing the Frank in 1980 with an FRT2 brass block on what it was probably his FRT1?
No, I keep hearing about, and I haven't seen that picture with the brass block.
I can pull it up.
I would like to see that too. I'm not sure I've seen that.
You've probably seen the picture, but it's not immediately recognizable until you.
Oh yeah.
So you can tell that the springs are going between these holes, and those holes are the string through holes.
Guys got the springs on there. That's so fun.
Yeah, the springs are funky. But anyway, Nick showed me. Nick has an FRT2 block, and it's identical to this. My theory on this, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say, is that Ed at this time was still very experimental with like block materials and plates, and base plate this and steel that. So my thought was he wanted to try a brass block in one of these things, asked Floyd for it, and this is the only thing that he could come up with, because they were probably prototyping this at the time.
Well, and what year was that? 80?
This would be 1980.
Yeah, that would be the invasion.
Well, I don't know. I don't think FRT2s were being made at that time. I think 81 was probably the earliest. So that could have been a Floyd thing, or they could have been experimenting with them. Because this is what the FRT2 block would look like. It's thin brass, but it also has the string through stuff on there. So it does look like there's extra holes in there, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, that's why I thought it may have been some sort of experimental string through thing. Because
of course, Ed's got to always experiment and have weird stuff on his guitars.
Of course, yeah. Well, I mean, wait till we get into the FRT4 prototype thing. That's a whole thing.
So
now that block that you're showing, Gosh, the information on the Floyd Rose page is so amazing, but I get lost in it sometimes.
So do I.
And yeah, and I'm just like, there's just so many things going through my head. And Robbie Stingle just put a thing out. He says 1982, and I would imagine he's talking about the FRT3. I would imagine that would
FRT3. Well, we're only really going off of Fernandez catalog stuff, unless you know for sure that what year it would have been, because that's the only confirmed date that you can go off of really for the FRT2 stuff, at least. FRT3.
That block that we were looking at, that brass block, is that the one that's got kind of the angled sides? Again, I'm getting lost in that information.
No, not this one. The FRT2 was the very early FRT2s had the brass block, and then they switched to zinc. So there wasn't made with the brass on there.
Okay.
And as far as I know, that's probably the first one that had a brass block on it, because before that, all the Floyds were steel.
Big steel, yeah.
Fernandez was steel, except for the 2. And then they went to the big block, the FRT3. So yeah, brass wasn't really a thing with the early Floyds. So if that was one on there, that was definitely something that Ed was just trying.
Yeah.
It could have even been something that he oh geez, my dog wants to say hi.
For a second, I was like,
he's getting pretty big. He's almost 70 pounds now, and he's less than a year old.
It's as big as Barney.
Yeah, right. Well, he eats as much as Barney.
Yeah, seriously.
It could. So I've always thought it was either one way or the other. It was either out of FRT2 string through experimentation, or it was the predecessor to what became the FRT2 block. I think Ed was, as we know, early on, Ed was very concerned about the sound. Dude, relax. I'm on the show. He was very concerned about the sound of the Floyd being brittle or thin, which I think had something to do with it being unplated steel on the earliest one.
Yeah.
Because that's certainly not going to help it sound good when you got rust under your strings. But anyway, he was definitely trying to find the right combination of materials to get the sound he wanted. So messing with brass blocks or different types of blocks and shapes of blocks makes total sense for that era.
Yeah. And it was on the B, and I really do think Eddie didn't like the sound of that, at least for a while. He moved the pickup a little forward towards the neck, I think, to add a little more bass to it.
It was definitely too close to the bridge at first.
Too close to the bridge. It was pretty bright. He was using, super distortions on there, so it was ceramic magnets. So he was always trying things, and I think that's probably what led to the standard stuff on the Franken strap. But yeah, I mean, so the earlier Floyds or whatever, this is an FRT1 garage made, I guess. They had a thinner steel block. They were still steel and they were thick. Sure, I brought something to measure this with, but it's in between 3/8. I don't know if they had a standardized thickness, because this is hot milled, not cold milled. Cold roll, sorry. So it could, I'm sure they vary a little bit, but it's got the slant on the.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, so the very, very first ones had a slant on them. It was probably just how you machine it, because the holes for the trem need to be at a slant so it doesn't pop out. So it was probably just easier just to put on the machine like this, drill it straight, and that's where you get that.
Yeah.
So if we're talking USA stuff from Floyd, this was probably one of the first ones made in, I don't even want to say how many there was, maybe 60, 70, whatever. But so this would have been on very similar to the B. I think there was still a couple little things Floyd was doing. I got some parts that were different than this, but they were probably earlier. So the threads were a little different. I think they're a little smaller. If these are 632, 832, those would have been maybe almost 440. So they were really thin. The holes on the base plate were a little bit different. I still want to try to get a hold of Randy Hanson to see if his is like that or not. I did talk to him a couple times, but it was hard to get a straight answer out of him. He likes to. I think you guys know why.
Yeah.
So
Does that have the Rose sticker on it?
this one does not. Some of them did, some of them don't. This one does not. I have another one that does have the Rose sticker on it. And then there was 2 different colors. There was red and blue, stamp, whatever it was on there.
Yep,
But
that's right.
this one does not. I don't know if it originally did or not. But
Rob, did we talk about the Randy Hansen prototype, the first Floyd, on the last show? Because I have the stand here of the Guitar World article, Guitar Player article.
Jimmy,
Sure.
did you have you ever owned a guitar with an original FRT 1 or 3?
talking to me?
Jimmy,
Yes,
have you ever owned a guitar with an original FRT 1 or 3?
I'm glad you asked because I'm going to tell you. Hold on.
We are jumping down a million rabbit holes here.
No, I actually I still have 2 of
Awesome.
them right now.
I'm trying to figure out how the heck do I blow? How do I showcase somebody?
So this is hard to see, but I mean, one of the telltale signs is that you got the steel colored saddle inserts, and then on the bottom of the plate, it doesn't say made in Germany. It doesn't have that stamp on it. And the plate, hard to see, but it's relatively thick.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, this is a terrible angle on it, but to me, in my opinion, these are my favorite because they have the fine tuners and just the way they're made. It's just that first run in '83 are exceptional bridges, in my opinion, and then the ones from '84 to '86 are also pretty good. But these are still the best ones. But I only have 2, and I remember I bought this at Sam Ash in Hempstead, and I paid over $300 for it, and this is in 1983 money. So that's and coincidentally, I think the new Floyds now are approaching that. They're like $255 or something. That's what Justin was telling me. So, and by the way, just as an aside, supposedly the new USA, I haven't tried them yet, are supposed to be phenomenal. And they got they're CNC in the saddles, and the nuts are Donnie, what's the word I'm looking for? The new nuts.
3D printed.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah. Which I've had a couple of things 3D printed in metal, and they're the process of having to make those, they have to be hardened to fully develop and everything. So they're going to be probably just as good as they were.
Yeah, and supposedly they come in different radiuses.
Not better.
That's
Different radiuses. Yeah, that's gonna be nice.
That's the strongest point about them, because before you either got 10, or if you could track down an R10, you get 15. So you really have to compromise on if you had a different fretboard radius, you just have to deal with the fact that the center strings are higher, or however you end up cutting the shelf to.
Well, Donnie, that neck, and we'll get to it in a minute. The one that you just made for me, those PV necks were 15 inches, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, if I put an R2 on there, it's going to be obviously a 10-inch radius, but I don't know how that's going to affect it. I've done that on other ones. That last PV that you made me, this is an interesting one that Johnny made for me, because it's a PV body with boogie body contours. So the tummy, the tummy cut, and the elbow. So it's a unique piece. It never existed, of course, but this is an actual PV neck, one of the leftover ones. It doesn't even have the side dots on it. It was never completed, but
that is so cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool guitar. So Donnie made it out of swamp ash for me, which is another cool thing. And these are DiMazzios; they're not PVs. So,
so what bridge is on that?
It's actually like an '86 Floyd.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what's the radius of the neck? So that's a 15, right?
15, yeah.
Yeah. So did you have to mess with the saddles at all, or did you just?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I had to just compensate for the nut, which is an R2. This is an R2 nut.
Yep.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, so you're going to get a little bit of stiffness in the middle strings. Like the outer strings are probably good, and then the middle strings are just a little higher at the nut. But as you go towards the bridge, if you get the bridge radius set, then it kind of levels out. But yeah, I mean, it's great that they're going to have different radii available. Of course, Godot has had that forever.
And I think Schaller offers that too now on their Lockmeister trems.
Yeah, which is funny because they were making the nuts before and they couldn't get it right for Floyd. But
yeah,
I know, and I couldn't get them. I tried to order them, I couldn't get them, and nobody seemed to know about them.
Really?
Nah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they have a lot of different features on them. Supposedly the fine tuner screws are much longer, so you have a much wider range to tune.
Yep.
There's a couple of other things that they improved. You know, the Germans are just nuts. They just constantly improving things. You know, like BMWs and
Yeah.
So
Yeah, right.
everything that they touch is. But you know, the I think the Floyd Productions went downhill for a while because I think they moved. From what I heard, and Mike, you probably know a lot more than I do, but there was a big family fight at Schaller. After the father died, and then the sons fought over it, and then they ended up moving the factory across the border in the Czech Republic. And of course, the labor costs are much lower there, and so the quality suffered for a while. It went down. I think it came back up. Now it's being made in the USA. So I don't know. I haven't tried them yet, but supposedly, according to Justin, that they're really good.
Wasn't there something in the page, Mike, the Floyd Rose page that talked about that? What Jimmy just said about Schaller company kind of having a little bit of a hiccup there.
Yeah.
I thought there was something on that.
I don't know if it's on the Floyd page or not. I'm not sure. I remember there was a fire at the. I think it was a long time ago. I'm not really sure what the current status is about the fight, but there was definitely something that was going on with production and everything, and I think that's probably what made Floyd change production from Schaller. I don't think you probably can't be able to get Floyd Rose from Schaller anymore. They're kind of doing their own thing now, and they don't. There's no patents, really that they have to follow anymore. And
when did the patent expire, Mike? When did the patent expire on Floyd's? A while ago, right?
A while ago, at least for the nut, and then there was 2 patents. I'm not exactly sure which one was which, but yeah, they're all expired. And so the license. People don't have to license them anymore. If you notice, like Goto doesn't say license under Floyd Rose patents anymore. So, I think, So Schaller, I think Schaller is pretty much done with Floyd, or Floyd's done with Schaller. And
sure.
I don't know where the base plates. They haven't said anything about the base plates. So for right now, it's just the nuts and the saddles are made in the U.S. And I'm sure the base plates will come next somewhere.
Well, I see a comment by Justin there. Can confirm the new 3D printed nuts are the bee's knees.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite a ringing endorsement. So.
Yeah, there might be, they might be doing something after they get 3D printed to make them even more. I'm sure there's probably a little bit of CNC cleanup. They might have to do.
There's got to be some fine tuning. Perfect.
They'd probably be closer to the original nuts. The original handmade, machine nuts that were spot on, man. I mean, they were machined to tight tolerances, and that's one of the reasons why the non-fine tuners back in the day were not as bad, because when you turn them now on an R2 nut, you turn the lock nut and the strings will go like this, and they'll either go sharp or flat depending on how high or low you have the string retainer. But back then they didn't move. You locked them down and they didn't move.
So just a quick word on that. That string retainer plays such an important role in tuning your guitar, because most people don't realize if you don't have that bar low enough, the string does not make contact with the nut. When you clap it down, it's going to go sharp. So,
right.
A few of the new Wolfgangs that I got, the ones that were made in Mexico, the string retainer bar was way high. I had to bring them way down so that the string makes full contact right across the wall.
Yeah,
that's really an important facet of keeping your Floyd Rose in tune. Most people don't know that.
Yeah, I mean, if you can see air underneath the string where it meets the nut, you got to screw that thing down.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Like you said, if it's too high, it'll go sharp. If it's too low, it'll go flat. Something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Most people think that, well, I got the fine tuners, it doesn't matter because I'll just tune out there. But at least when I set up a Floyd with fine tuners, I want that. I don't want it to move as much as when I clamp it down. I don't want it to go sharp or high as much as I can. Yeah. And I usually keep the fine tuners and as middle as they can be. So if you need to go sharp or high, you can.
Except
and if you have except for the low E, you want all the way down so you can
vary it if you don't have a deep in there.
Right. Yeah.
It's funny. I'm glad you said that, Jimmy, about the the strings making contact with both of those slotted fulcrums, whatever you want to call it, as it slants down, because you're right. There's so many people that don't know about that. And when I read online, folks having tuning problems or this or that, that is absolutely one of the things that I think about if I'm going to be trying to help somebody out. And the other thing too is a lot of folks don't remember that on a Floyd, a lot of times when they're having trouble, these screws aren't tight.
Yeah.
And I always check that.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they're like, I can't keep the thing in tune. I can't, and there's so many different things that, as you guys all know, that come into play. But that's just one of those things that you don't really, sometimes it takes years to figure that stuff out. I mean, I'm still figuring out little tweaks. I mean, I set all my own guitars up. I'm not much of a solderer. So when I know the electronics, I have my guitar tech guy that I bring my guitars to. When I do a build, other than wiring the pickups, I mean, I could do it. I can do it. I'm just not very good at the soldering piece. But shimming the necks, setting the Floyds up, all that stuff. I do all that myself, and it's just been all these years of just trial and error. That's been what's really helped me out.
Well, for me, and Scott Smith said this. He goes, you have to maintain the fleet because he has quite a few guitars too. So if I was to go to a tech for everyone, I would just go bankrupt. So out of necessity, you have to do it yourself. You become your own home mechanic, so to speak. So I did a lot of things by trial and error. But now, of course, you have the advantage of having all kinds of YouTube tutorials that I never had access to before. So there's a lot of good tips, that people have learned over the years to keep your guitars. But I do all my own work. I do all the setups. I do all the intonation. I do the soldering. I do everything. Donnie just builds the bodies the next for me, sends it to me, and I put it together.
And you also have a knack for finding which body should go with which neck, because that's an important thing. You're getting a guitar to play.
The great part about bolt-on necks is you can switch them all the time, which I do. Constantly swapping out necks and pickups, especially too. There's times I'll get into an afternoon and I'll go through like 50 pickups, and then I realize I end up right at the beginning again. It's
that's how it always works.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, matching. When you're mixing and matching, like Dimitri doing, you got to match the wood with the pickup magnet with the Floyd bridge block. It all plays a part in how balanced that's what he was doing. He was always messing. Well, I got a bright sounding guitar, but I'll put a different Alico 2 magnet in this thing, and it'll darken up a little bit. But the Floyd bridge is brightening it up a little bit. So it was all just fine tuning, the sound and the frequency that he was looking for. And it's fun to do it with. I think Dimitri has a bunch of guitars with just different configurations. I think that's kind of what he's messing with. He's constantly doing.
Donnie, you have a werewolf behind you. I'm just warning you.
I know.
But no,
looks like he's drinking out of the condensate. That's Reaper.
Yeah.
No,
Reaper, sit.
but there is. People talk about wood all the time, but to me, it's not a species of wood that's important. It's the individual piece of wood. Like you can have. I played guitars that were made out of plywood that sounded great. And conversely, I played guitars made out of koa, super exotic, that sounded like crap. They just didn't have it. So it's a matter of finding. Even if you have a crap body, eventually you'll find the right tuner that goes with it. Like Mike was just saying, it's not easy to do all the time. It really is.
That's what the 5150 is, isn't it, Jimmy? Isn't the 5150 made out of plywood?
Oh, well, here we go.
Stay away from that one for a minute, but
it's made out of bachelor.
What's interesting too is this is a trick that I learned a long time ago, and I know you guys like my little. It's not really a trick. It's again years and years of trial and error. A long time ago, Adam Reaver from FU Tone talked about. He called them, if I remember, he talked about these two pieces on the Floyd Rose as tone robbers. And, this little aluminum piece that goes under the, and then the finger thing, whatever you call it, the finger springs, whatever, that put pressure on the saddle screws and all that. So it's interesting. I never really paid much attention until I got my first, actually it was before that, but if you look at, this is an original Hanson Metalworks FRT5 original. This is one of the real ones that I got from our good friend Jerry Leica. And this will be going on my 5150 when I get it back. And this is just the most kick-ass bridge I've ever owned in my life. This is, like I said, it's the real deal. And Mike, the ones that you made are just, you can't even tell the difference. I have 5 of yours, I think, 4 or 5 of them. But if you look at these here, they don't have any of that garbage on them. They are just the base, the big ass steel block, and yeah, there you go, Donnie. And you know, you can take these screws and they kind of flutter. They're just kind of whatever, because once they have tension on the saddles, they're going to pull up anyways. Now, what I found is when you take these 2 things off, and every guitar is a little different, so you got to adjust them, and you set it up like I have this one. This is a 84 reissue, and I have both of those off. I don't know if you guys can see the bridge, but you get a really nice. You guys can hear that. That is the base of the Floyd touching the wood, and then you know, if you have a big steel block, I think, you know, Robbie Stingle says this all the time. He says steel is the best, and I agree. Brass is great. Big brass blocks, they have a place, I guess. But I have some guitars that just, I don't like how they sound. But I'll tell you what I have done to almost all of my guitars. I don't care if they're Music Mans, Peavies, Kramers, custom builds. I remove those 2 pieces, and then I set my action. And I actually like my bridge a little bit tilted back, a little bit like that. And I have a nice low action. I'll tell you, the resonance, it is just, it just does wonders to the sound. And I'll tell you what, when you hit that bar, it's almost like butter. And CHS Custom Guitars, Craig, was talking to me one time, and also I think Jimmy Carr is another one. I did this to his Music Man. And maybe Kurt, I don't know if I did this to one of your guitars, but I know we've talked about it. I've done that mod to their guitars, and they literally are like, wow, this just feels incredible. The resonance is better. You know, the way I test an electric guitar is not by necessarily plugging it in. Initially, I mean, that's part of it. I will hit a chord, a cowboy chord, like an A chord or whatever, acoustically, and you can hear that thing ring. You know, so it's we got a great person in the chat here, but that is how I test those. And I'll tell you, I don't know if, you know, everybody agrees with me, but the folks that I've done that to their guitars makes a huge difference. What do you guys think about that?
Jimmy, go ahead, because you probably experimented more than I have on that.
I have. Yeah, I have to say it makes a difference, but it makes a difference in a positive way and a negative way too, because it depends on the trem cavity hole. Sometimes it won't make full contact with the body without those shims in there,
Right.
or it'll be at a weird angle. You can't actually get it. It also depends on the neck pocket and the neck that you're using. So it definitely makes a difference. But again, sometimes it's not attainable when you take it out. Then you won't be able to set up your guitar properly. So
That is
I agree with Rob too that I like my Floyds on just a slight angle backwards.
Yeah,
they should never be forward. That's
right.
Right. Straight or slightly back is correct. Anything else is going to be a problem in terms of tuning or returning to stability. But for the most part, I don't remove them. I've tried that after Rob said that once many years ago. But when the FRT5s that I have, the one that I got from you, Mike, and the other one from, I don't even remember who it was that made that first run, there is definitely a difference in terms of tone transfer to the body. I don't know how much of a difference it makes in terms of the amp, but when you play acoustically, it does make a big difference. Yeah.
And sometimes the action is, it's just not sustainable if you take them both off. I've actually had some guitars where it's actually too low, and depending on how you shim the neck. So
sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't take them off.
What I'll do is I'll put one or the other on. I've done that on some guitars, and that actually gives it just enough. And the other thing you got to remember, if you have a Floyd that has a D-tuner on it, if you take this off, activate the D-tuner into the D position and your drop D, you go hit that bar, it's going to pop back into half E.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why those come in handy.
So
Some people actually kind of clip that off because it can be a little too hard. So if you clip it off, it all depends on your guitar, whether you need it or not. I think John Marks was saying, sometimes you need it because it'll depends on the trem cavity hole. If it's sometimes it'll hit just right. But at the same time, if Ed was I leave him on personally. I don't think there's a problem with him. And if you think about it, Ed had his Franken Strat with arguably the best tone we've ever heard, and he's got it sitting up against a quarter. So
3/8 of an inch too far from the nut.
Yeah, so I don't know. But if you're looking for a different tone, then and it does help, then yeah, of course, go for it. But sometimes you can do it, sometimes you can't do it.
Yeah.
So
aluminum, I think, makes a difference. And Guitar Samurai just said, why not make those parts out of stainless? I mean, that might make a difference. The
claw is spring steel, so that's steel. The other part, it's probably a softer. But once again, I think you're getting down to, if you can hear a difference, that's good. Reaper's getting a little bit of the chair there.
Yeah,
but
that's a good point, though. I mean, it's preference, and everybody's a little bit different. To my ears, and to my just when I feel the bridge and I feel that clunk 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 versus a soft kind of a softer type touch.
Yeah.
I personally hear this is just me, a better resonance. I do have some Floyds that have these just because I think they work fine with them. Specifically, a couple of my guitars that have floaters on them. But it's so funny, Mike. You're right. I mean, everybody's a little bit different. Like I like a real super low action. It's easier for me to play. I know guys that are like, dude, your action is like, whoa, I can't play it like that. And they play on high action, and they're freaking shredding 10 times better than me. I'm like, how the frick do you do that?
It's how you were first starting to play. I think I typically like a little higher action than normal too. Maybe because I don't know. I played the Wolfgang for so long, and there was a 15-inch radius, and then you go to something else and you play that for a little while with 7.25 inch radius, like a Fender, wherever, and you get used to that, and you go back, you're like, whoa, this is a completely different. Some people can go from different radius and setups and play, just like they would if that was their main guitar.
Yeah.
I can't do that for whatever reason. It takes me a while to get accustomed to a certain feel and everything. So when I go to, I was self-conscious, but I wanted to go to another friend's house or something and play their guitar. I'm like, man, this guitar, I can't play this. It sucks. I sound terrible because they can only play it on, the way I set it up.
Yeah, I know. I'm the same way. Mike, would you talk a little bit about? I know everybody wants to hear about them because they're just awesome. We've all had them. I think we all have an original FRT5 Hanson Metalworks. We used to think they were made by American Precision Metalworks for a long time, and I know Darren corrected me, and a lot of us, and Mike, you might have been part of that too. That no, it's Hanson Metalworks that had that first contract of what we thought it was 200, then it was 800. They made while Schaller was tooling up in Germany, and I mean this is what everybody wants. Us geeks want. I remember
that's what got me going right there.
I remember
Darren told me he knows some guys who were pissed off that they had that one instead of the Schaller because they're like, the Schaller looks so much better than that one.
I went before 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, before I really understood the whole whale tail thing. I went to a used guitar shop and I found this Kramer Pacer. It was like $400, $350, $400. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, this is cool, because I was a big Kramer guy, Eddie Van Halen guy. And I see one of these bridges, and it wasn't one of yours. It wasn't one of Jim Francis. It was one of the real deals because you guys weren't doing those yet. And I'm like, what the frick is wrong with this Floyd? This thing just looks cheap. That's what I said at first. I'm like, it doesn't have the screws. It doesn't have this. It did
Yeah.
have a big block, and I knew not I didn't understand the tone at the time. Might have been 13 or 14 years ago, and it just looked different. The saddles looked different. Had this, you look in the trem cavity because it didn't have a cavity cover. Had this big long stemmed bar. I'm like, this is just weird. I literally thought that it was like a cheap, knockoff Floyd, and
Where's the license? Why doesn't it say licensed under Floyd Rose on
right.
this thing?
It had a super high action on it, so when I was messing around, it wasn't in tune or anything. Like, whatever.
This thing sucks.
Yeah, this thing sucks. $150, and I put it back. I mean, the freaking bridge itself.
That's the first time I've heard that story. So
I passed it up, and I kicked myself years later when I realized. I think it was Dave Nesdall, bless his heart. R&P buddy. Was like, dude, that was an FRT5 whale tail, and he's like, and then obviously for the last I don't know how many years, we've been loving these things, and like I said, thanks to Jerry, I ended up with a real one.
Mhm.
But Mike, would you just talk for a few minutes about how did you get to the point where you're like, I'm going to build one of these, and I'm going to make it, as accurate as possible. I mean, and you've done a million of them for me. I mean, you even did this one on my Kramer ad guitar. You even did this one, to, non-chromed, no logo. Like, this is just awesome. I mean,
Down and dirty, yeah.
How did you get to the point where you were doing all this stuff?
Because I couldn't find them.
Yeah.
Necessity, right?
Right.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was a COVID build. I think I might have just started hearing about these whale tails because, like you said, there was a kind of a gap where these were kind of like, who knows what these things are? These are definitely not, original Floyd. Some people might not even noticed on them, but I didn't know what it was. I've had the Glenn LaFerman poster on my wall of the Frankenstrat with the whale tail on it going, well, it looks different, but I don't know what, I guess it's just, I don't know. Eddie always had different weird things. So, so then became a little quest to find a Hansen, or at the time, we thought they were made by Kaler. At least that was what, Darren's site, like I said, I think Darren had the site maybe less than a year on before I kind of was on the radar for certain things. So we thought they were made by American Precision Metalworks, which was Kaler at the time, which they did do on the Floyd Rose Pro, Low Pro, due to a contractual agreement from a litigation case, I think. Yeah. But so I was always on the lookout, and I heard about a run that was done, and I don't know if they were going to make any more of them. So I was like, well, I got nothing else to do. I had some CAD experience from guitar building, and I always, when I get something interesting, I always model it up in the CAD program anyway, just to have it, because it was kind of like a hobby. It's like my video game. People have questions with that. So that was kind of my thing, and I was like, well, I'll look at maybe building a couple of them, and I built a relationship with a couple of guys here that were maybe looking into it, and I was like, okay, well, I'll make 5. I'll keep 1 or 2, and then it just snowballed kind of from there. And then realizing how much they were going to cost to make, and well, you need to order a certain amount to get the price down. And I was like, it was a balancing act, and and at that time I didn't have a real one, to be honest with you. I didn't have one until I started having prototypes made. From saddles, and then I finally got one. I'm like, okay, well, that was close, but let's tweak it here and tweak it there. And now, I got a real one. The first one I found was actually just a base plate. I found just a base plate looking through a parts bin. And I was so excited. I'm going, oh man! And I looked and looked and looked for the saddles. I couldn't find anything. I still couldn't find anything.
See the logo offset. It's not.
It was like it was an Indiana Jones experience. It was so cool. And so so I actually had the real deal, to go off of and everything. So as this was going on, I think I got a real one, and I got another one, and so And during that time, I was still collecting other ones because, I was like, well, I'm becoming a Floyd collector. So I got an FRT3, got an FRT4 Fernandez. And then it just kind of became an obsession, every day, all day, looking for Floyd stuff, looking for anything, and asking around, hey, does this have a Floyd, looking for the right kind of things. And yeah, somebody said it sounds like Goonies when he finds a $50 bill.
Yeah.
And, it was kind of fun. And then it became just kind of a little game, it's like, hey, if I can find this and, find that, and parts started coming and then other parts, but it all started with the Floyds.
Yeah.
I forget what the original question was.
Well, we were talking about, how you came to, making these FRT5s,
Okay, yeah. I answered pretty good.
And I can honestly say, I mean, I have, let's see, I have one on my Neptune Kramer. I have one on my other 5150, and I have this one. So I think I have 3 of your, of your creations.
You have more than I do, yeah.
It's crazy, and I'm always looking for more. But what's interesting is right down to the fine tuners. And if you look at the real one, and in yours too, because it's exact, the fine tuners, they're almost like they're not even centered. They're kind of like
they're very loose. They're very loose, yeah.
Yeah, very loose. But what I find interesting is, and I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, that was because it was Fernandez Japan for a short period of time. You look at the FRT4. Oh, I got the angle right. And those fine tuners are like neural. They're like high quality fine tuners. They're centered. Like it is just there's the Boss logo one. And this is like better quality than the Hansen Metalworks. And
absolutely,
this is the holy grail right here.
Yeah.
What is your why do you think that is? And I know those Fernandez and Boss logos FRT4s, which came out before the FRT5, because that's the first run. Ed was like, no, my hand's hitting it, put them back, whatever. How are they better quality than the Hansen Metalworks FRT5s, which are our holy grail?
Because they were making them a lot more and a lot longer than what we now know as Hansen, Machine Works. What we're making them, they were kind of an aerospace company, so they were pretty much just ordered just to make these certain runs of tremolo. So they weren't a tremolo manufacturer. They weren't a fine tuning. They weren't a screw manufacturer. They were just an all around machine shop. So they put all this stuff together pretty quickly and just get it out. Whereas Fernandez or whatever factory Fernandez was using was obviously they were cast. They were know what they were doing. So. Yeah, that's the big difference, and it looks like like you said, they were just look more professional. One of my favorite ones actually is the Fernandez FRT5, which is
I was just going to say that,
which is the Hansen version, whale tail version, but it has the embossed logo. I think that's actually my favorite because
those also have. I got to look at the page, but they have the neural fine tuners and everything.
Yeah, everything was the same. Let me get one.
Oh, you have one? Fantastic.
Lynn Ellsworth told me that he was involved in making that contract happen with Hansen.
Really?
Yes. He's the one that told me about Hansen, and I went looking for a Michael Hansen for months. I called up so many dead wrong numbers.
I used to go to
Nobody has landlines anymore, by the way.
I went to high school with a Craig Hansen.
Yeah.
Elementary school, excuse me. I don't think that was related though.
But yeah, so once again, Lynn was the one that mentioned Hansen and started looking, and he did mention that there was around 800 of them. He had a contract for 800 of them, but I don't know if I think he might have been talking about the FRT1s. I think he might have got them confused, because he did say there was 800 of the FRT1s. I was like, well, that sounds like a lot or something. But he was talking about the FRT5s. So yeah, once again, Lynn. And then looking for this Michael Hansen, I finally gave up. And then I think he showed up on one of the forums saying, "Hey, this is Michael Hansen. I made the thing." Like, oh, there he is. So
where have you been all my life? Yeah.
I know. And unfortunately, it was just another job for him. So it wasn't really, he did have a couple of things. I think he got a Floyd Rose signature from Floyd, but I think again, it was just another job for him, so there wasn't too much more information we could get on, through that. But another interesting thing was the Fernandez FRT5.
Yeah,
So this was actually made, I think, before the Hansen one, and it has the embossed logo just like the FRT4, same saddle, same fine tuners.
that is so cool.
Big block. But this thing is cast, obviously, because of the embossed in it. But this thing is beefy. It looks cool. This is actually, I think, visually better appealing to me than the other one. And they didn't make very many of these. There's probably less of these than there are, original Hansen whale tails. Another thing people talk about, well, what's a whale tail? What's an FRT5? What's this? What's that? What is the Hansen, Machine Corp FRT5 whale tail is probably as close as you're going to get to actually identifying the thing, because there wasn't a designation for that. So I had another, conversation with other people. So there has to be some sort of standardized wording we can use for certain things. And then, so, I think with Darren and Donny, and everybody, we all know what it is, but certain, you say whale tail, you automatically think of the FRT5 Hansen, what's on the, 5150, most famously probably,
So here's a quick question. What would you say a number? Do you think, and I would venture to say yes, but I want to hear you say it, yes or no. Do we think that in the United States, or probably anywhere in the world, I suppose, there are Kramer guitars out there with Fernandez embossed logos, FRT5s on them that folks don't even know about? And how many would you say? I mean, the whole ton of us are, we're collecting these FRT5 Hansen ones, but these particular bridges, how many would you say, given that there's probably 800 that were made-ish, are still on guitars that folks have that they don't even know what they have?
The first part, the ones made from Fernandez are probably not going to be on any Kramers.
Really?
These were Japan only, very small. I think forget finding any that's not on a Fernandez, at least,
Yeah.
And probably, always came from Japan. So, and the second part is you're going to probably find most of the whale tails that are still on guitars, I think. Unless it had a broken saddle that was replaced or somebody got a new one, say, well, this thing broke, whatever, they could take them off. I found probably out of the 800, I mean, they're still out there, but, it was very, very small run from, I think the earliest one now I found from Kramer on the serial number was B2, I think, instead of B4.
Yeah.
If people took good care of them, they're still going to be on there. It's hard to say, it's just really hard to say, but
I've got a B2 Pacer Special with a Rockinger on it, so it must be one of the last ones.
Yeah.
The last whale tail I got came with Vanguard neck, and on the neck they wrote Beef 2. So I don't know. The Vanguard neck didn't have any other indication of any other trim on it. It didn't have any holes for the string retainer, so it wasn't like a flicker or anything else or whatever they were using. So that would have been really early. But we assume the whale tails arrived around B4, which is when Eddie, went to the factory. That's when the whole show was coming. That's when the Floyds were starting to come in from Hansen. Which, funny enough, so Hansen only made the tremolo. They didn't make the nuts. They didn't make the retainers. They didn't make the posts. Those were all left over from Fernandez, which would have been on the FRT4, FRT5, and earlier, actually. So if you're looking at the FRT5 whale tail posts that were on the 5150 were actually Fernandez parts and the nut, and and then, of course, when Schaller came in, that's when everything switched to Schaller. The tuners on Kramer switched to Schaller. pickup switched to Schaller. I mean, pretty much everything was Schaller at that point.
Yep.
Because before that it was Goto, and then even before that was Schaller. So they actually went back to Schaller. But yeah,
Go ahead. Finish up.
I don't know where I was going, so go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say that would lead, and you guys jump in anytime you want. There's just so many things going on, and the folks in the stream in the chat, we're going to try to jump in there and answer some questions in a few minutes. We're just going off on going down these rabbit holes with all this stuff. But the FRT7, this is a non-logoed one that I have on my Rude, which is the fair warning, one of the fair warning errors. And that's not accurate to what Ed had on his. He had an FRT1, we think, right, Mike?
On that, yeah.
But the FRT7, which is basically a FRT5 type bridge, we can go into all the details. I have two of them. I have one on my I have one on my Vetus guitar, which should have an FRT4 on if you want to be period correct. See what I did there? Period.
We need to get Mike to make those already.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Those would be
sevens, like what? How did those come about? And that was a short run, also, wasn't it?
No, the sevens were a little longer than a little. The longest running Fernandez trem was the FRT3, which would have ran up until they had the contract ending, and the FRT7 was pretty long too. But the FRT7 switched after Floyd went to Schaller now.
Right.
Fernandez was now making, calling him the head crasher, the head banker. So they were still kind of the same. They had the bent base plates, just like Whale Tails, a little thicker than they were. A lot of very similarities. The off-centered logo to the left of the post, and so they're very similar. They're poor man's Whale Tail, like you said.
They have the oval slot where the screw goes in versus the boxed one, like on the regular German. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
yeah.
So it was all very, very similar. I think you meant like this.
Yep.
The oval.
Yeah. Yep. They're oval, whereas they're boxed on the.
Yeah, because you can do different things. Yeah. Well, they were technically stamps. Sometimes you can get away with bending them afterwards, but I think it was so when you're casting parts where you can get away with different things than the machining, because if you're going to machine that flat, you'd have to angle it at a completely different way and get that. So they were bent, but they were still, for whatever reason, this one was cast, but it still had the oval instead of the instead of the thing. So it was kind of weird. It was probably just overlooked. They probably didn't even need to square it off.
Donnie, this is guitar with one of your necks on it, actually.
You're one of the only people who's ever got one of those necks.
Yeah, I know, it's great. This is my Star guitar. This is actually a this is a lock body, lock Donnie neck. Plays amazing. I chose to go with. We're bouncing all over the place here, so there was. You mentioned the head crasher, the head banker, and all those kind of knockoffs. This is a double eagle FRT4 that I put on this guitar. Which,
and that one has a logo too, huh?
This one has the logo, which is really, really interesting.
Yeah, you don't see too many with the logo, actually.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the double eagles?
A little bit. I don't know too much more than they just were copies. I mean, I don't know who made them. They were on a lot of Japanese guitars, and I think they made them here to the States too. There was quite a few double eagle parts. They were probably kind of like the Mighty Might of Japan, I think. They just sold aftermarket stuff, but you can always tell a double eagle because they use screws on the bottom of that instead of a one piece, or there's lots of ways to tell.
The bar looks like it's literally goes from main to floor.
They were long, yeah,
super long.
Yeah,
I think mine's a double eagle too. It's got brass saddles and not a brass base plate, but it's got that angled brass block.
Yeah, there's a lot of telltale signs of it being a double eagle. But like I said, there was a few, especially FRT3s, that were very similar looking, that were either used on ESP or Aria, different manufacturers. So even within the FRT3 copies, there's differences between them. And I don't know if it was a manufacturer thing saying, hey, make it like this, or another thing, but it could have been two different companies making them. So they're all, if they're not USA, they're either double eagle or an ESP copy, or and brass saddles is another tell. The bent or the angled block being brass, but it's black. Another tell. Obviously, another tell is the metric screws. But that's not always the case. Sometimes they were imperial screws. So it's like, well, they were trying to identify them with people because they look very similar, but only within each other. Once you started getting the USA stuff, there's a big difference. But they're good trim, especially the threes. The funny thing is that the FRT ones, the Fernandez, the base plates weren't hardened, so they were very, very easily damaged because the posts were hardened. So you have a non-hardened thing rubbing against the hard thing. So replacing those were kind of hard. And I think kind of the same thing with the double eagles, where the base plates weren't hardened, or sometimes they were brass, and you get two different hardness things rubbing against each other. It's no good.
Brass base plate with a 2-point trim does not sound like a good idea.
I know. So once
They're
again,
going with whatever they have,
right?
I guess.
Rockingers have two small. What are the pins? What size are the pins on the Rockingers rubbing?
2 millimeter.
Wow.
2 millimeter pins going into a brass, and the hole is 3 mil with a regular point drill, so you get like the 119 degree angle or whatever, so they can just kind of rock in it, and it works. But I know it's going to wear out.
Oh yeah.
I've made a couple rocking chairs.
It's one of those things too. It's like you can improve on them, but do you want to improve on them?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can make them out of steel. You can make them out of stainless, but do you really want to do it? Yeah.
Jimmy, have you owned any double eagle or head crasher, head banker?
No, I have never.
Yeah, I want to know the pre-Schaller stuff. You got some FRT3s, I think. You kind of specialize in, or not specialize, but I think you like the earlier Schaller stuff. As far as
I don't have any non-fine tuner bridges. My collection, I basically started at the 83. So just to make my life easier. I know a lot of people rave about the FR3s, T3s and ones, but to me, it just seems like a real challenge to get it in tune. I mean, you have to tune it flat to get it up, and I mean, I know Ed and a bunch of people. I know Brad Gillis swears by him. He actually will only put those on his guitar.
I find that so strange.
Yeah.
Why would anybody? I mean, okay, if you want to go by profile, it's smaller. I mean, but even the FRT4 is shorter. But why would anybody want to have to unclamp the nut all the time? I mean, I see back in the day. I mean, I have one on my B. I have one on my circles. But for me, I still play them sometimes, but that's not going to be my go-to guitar. I have them on there strictly for collection purposes, and I want to own them because I think they're cool. But why would anybody prefer them? That's just beyond me.
I think they. I mean, supposedly they sound great, just the way they were made. Something about the handmade aspect of it and the steel but I haven't had too much experience with them. But for me, it's always about pragmatism over historical accuracy on these things. Even on the replicas that I have, I'll put fine tuner Floyds because it just makes life so much easier. To pick up a guitar that's out of tune and now you got to start to mess around with it. It's too much. It's hard enough with a fine tuner because the tempo changes, everything expands and contracts, and it's very hard to keep a guitar in tune to begin with. So
I have a couple of hardtail guitars. I have a Greco Destroyer, but I was even thinking about putting a bridge on there with the fine tuners. She's like, I'm going all the way up here to the bridge, the tuners, and you go too far and you go too much. It's like the fine tuners on the Wolfgang, on a hardtail Wolfgang with a locking nut, I think it's great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Perfect. I even have locking tuners with guitars with Floyds on them just to make string changing easier. You know.
Donnie, try tuning those yellow double neck Kramers of ours. Those are the biggest pain in the ass to tune. You got to go high, you got to go low, you got to go high.
And a 12 string's already a bitch to tune, let alone the Rockinger 6-string side. But the 12 string's already hard to tune, and the break angle on that neck, like when the strings are like coming at like a 45-degree angle past the nut, down, like, and really steep down into the headstock. Yeah. So
it's a total mind fuck for me restringing that thing. Because I'm just like, okay, this has the little, it's got the, what do you call the little holes where the in the headstock.
The headstock,
yeah, you know what I'm talking about. You got that, then you got the tuner, then you got that, then you got the tuner, then down here, and you're wrapping it around the bridge, and then you got to go to the tuner. It is just a total mind screw, and I mean, it takes me literally. I mean, I have 3 guitars with Steinberger trems on them. And I love the trans trem. I can tune and calibrate a trans trem in less time than I can take to tune that 12-string yellow double neck.
Yeah,
diver down era. It's crazy,
But it's cool when you get it all set up. It's fun. It's fun to play.
It is.
It is. Have it built right with all the right parts and everything.
Yeah, I brought that guitar to EVH-Con twice. I brought it to EVH-Con, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, and Joe Suma played it. The owner and organizer of EVH-Con at Greenwich Guitar Store, and he played Secrets on it. Did an amazing job. And I brought it the last time. I think it was maybe 2 cons ago. I don't remember. And he was getting ready to tune it up, and all of a sudden, pink, he broke one of the screws. one of the strings. And it was, so it rendered, we couldn't use the guitar. But it's such an intricate little finicky guitar. It's a great guitar. It's fun to have. But you're right. Once you get that thing tuned up and it's ready to go, I mean, it is just a fun guitar to play. Really is.
It's amazing, and talking to Paul Unkert reveals this, but it's amazing how haphazard some of those builds were for Ed early on. Yeah. Like that thing, they didn't have any capability to make a 12-string guitar, let alone a double neck, but they just they grabbed an aluminum neck. They're like, Paul, I guess Paul was the architect of all this. He's like, oh, well, I guess we'll just drill extra holes in the headstock and run the strings that way instead of, So, and the bridge apparently was a wraparound or a string through kind of bridge, but it wasn't intended to be a 12-string. It was just a wraparound style bridge, and they run 6 up the neck and 6 down the neck. So it's just funny to me to think like we're still all these years later, we're chasing all these details, and these are just things that these guys like hacked together over a weekend. Like, well, this will do the trick, I guess.
I know
this is good enough for Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah, totally. It's just so funny that we chase. Jimmy, you and I, all these years, we studied this, and Donnie, and I've learned so much from you over the last number of years too. I remember sitting at Dave Nesdall's house one night. We just went out and got pizza, and we came back, and we're sitting there playing guitar. And Donnie, you were doing a deal with Dave or something. I forget what it was. And you were doing something for him, making something for him. And you and I started talking on the phone, and I'm just like, I remember getting off the phone, and I was just like, whoa, I'm like, this kid, I mean, kid, you're not a kid, you're an adult, but I'm like, this kid is like freaking wizard. Like, where's this guy? I didn't even know any of this stuff. It's crazy. And we study all this stuff that Ed did back in the day. And as Paul Unkert told me personally, oh yeah, we just grab whatever, we had gold tuners, we had chrome tuners, just putting the guitar together, I mean, Ed, we're going out to lunch, and Ed is just, making Neptune guitars, just putting polka dots and his paint's dripping down, all this crazy stuff. Like, he used the term willy-nilly. Everything was willy-nilly. We just get random pieces of tape, and cut them with razor blades. And we did the black stripes. Ed always said, I wanted a guitar red with white stripes with minimal black stripes. If it had too many black stripes, he didn't like it. And it's funny because in 5150, there's one Kramer guitar that has 1 million black stripes on it, which is whatever the story is on that. But we chase these things, and we try to figure out. I mean, it took me forever to figure out how they did the black stripes. Why was there overspray on black stripes? because they took a manila envelope and just they got everything done, gonna make the black stripes, just lay it on, don't tape another, and then when the envelope lays over this body, you know, the spray paint or the paint gun or whatever you use, there's nothing to make it a solid, you know, line. So that's why it just sprays out. They just literally laid envelopes on and pulled them off. Next stripe. It was that crazy. Yeah. That's how they did it. And there was no, you know, here we are chasing this, you know, this passion that we have over something that these guys just literally did in like 5 seconds. Like, didn't even care, you know?
We're trying to have perfect imperfections, you know.
Yes.
Seriously.
Things.
And that's what is so hard to replicate, I guess I would say specifically in painting. I mean, Mike, I mean, you're trying to replicate, you know, hand tooling marks and stuff like that on, you know, saddles and stuff. But it's so hard to replicate these willy-nilly techniques that, you know, Paul said, without making them look too labored. Because if they look too labored, they look wrong. That is key. And that is where a lot of you guys have just taken it to another level. You know, it's crazy.
Keep it simple. Keep it simple.
Yeah, that's
somebody
it.
posted right here. A lot of good inventions and products were made. No, it was the other one. Engineers and designers that try to achieve perfect perfection never release any products. That's true.
Yep.
If you keep going and striving for perfection, and you're never going to attain it, and you're never going to be happy with it, and you're never going to get it done. You know,
and perfection is built off of baby step increments. So you don't get to a product like this by just doing it. You get to a product like this by slowly adjusting over time and getting small details here and there until it all comes together. And the same thing with Mike's product. I mean, with yours, I think that you kind of nailed it on the first go, but I think you had to take baby steps to get every detail right before you came out with it. Because, you know, in your case,
that's what Eddie told Dave in '96. Baby steps. You're not in the fucking band, dude. 2 songs, baby steps. And then the MTV Music Awards. I'm sorry, Donnie, go ahead.
No, here, you nailed it. That's a great analogy. So, but it's great because there's lots of guys out there who are experimenting with it, and some guys, just to shout them out, I mean, like John Marks, who's been in the chat, has been doing this for so long, and he's been a great friend to many of us, and now he's getting into building bodies, and there's just so many guys out there. I think it's very healthy to have a lot of different people with kind of a similar mindset chipping away at these things slowly and becoming, because, you know, I could make 1 million of these things and think I've got it made, and someone could come along and find a detail that I didn't catch, you know, and vice versa. So it's a community effort. And I think we mentioned earlier about like how people can get into it with each other sometimes. This is a very niche community, and as a niche community, I think we need to embolden each other, because that's how we can make progress and to make these things more accurate.
Let's talk a little bit about. Oh, go ahead, Donnie. Sorry.
I was just saying, and sometimes there has to be little differences, or you know, whatever it was. You know, it was just kind of just following up what Donnie was saying. But yeah, sometimes there kind of has to be little differences here and there.
Concessions, we'll call
them.
Like, for example, if I go to the Lock Kramer replica next, this is an 84, which we don't do a lot of, but we use dual action truss rods just because it's so much more convenient to install the rod, and it's much better for the product. The one downside I would say is that it makes the neck a hair heavier than doing a single action rod. But for the diehard who wants a single action rod, we can do it. But like, that's an example of a concession that really makes the product better, but it also makes things easier for us. So we just kind of do it, you know?
Yeah. If you can't see it, you know, that's fine with me.
We got so many, you know, I want to apologize to the folks in the chat, because the 4 of us are just geeking out. And I know we've been neglecting the chat. And I just want to say to you guys, this is a little bit different of a show tonight, where we're just kind of going off on all these tangents, jumping down rabbit holes and popping up gopher holes and back down and whatever. We're not ignoring you. We're trying to catch what we can. But we're getting sidetracked, which is kind of the whole idea of this show. So please don't take it personal. We will take a couple of minutes and try to get in there and answer some questions. And the 4 of us are trying to field what we can. But then one of us says something, and then we all just go nuts. But I want to say, Yeah, I want to say that our good friend Jerry Leica, who's hopefully still watching, oh, and John Marks, by the way, did my Frankenstrat, and it is still the most incredible one I've ever had. And I was at the Met. I got to see the Frankie myself.
What is that?
That's it. This
Whoa,
is
whoa!
John Mark's body, by the way, with the real
Oh,
TV neck. But yeah, if anybody does John's talents, this is just one of the many examples.
yes,
Show you.
get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's great. And
I'm proud of the guy for starting to getting into bodies and just like to nail them like this. I mean, this is not easy to do. I've been making bodies and necks for over 10 years now. It's not some of the details that go into it, just into getting a product that's well sanded and presentable. It's not easy to do that. And this is the first body I've seen of John, and I'm new to even knowing that he was interested in doing this. And
yeah,
getting this thing and seeing it, I have only good things to say to him. So good job, John.
he's awesome. And matter of fact, Jeremy White, I was talking to Jeremy. I was on his show yesterday, and Jeremy hooked me up today, and he was like, "Hey, I want to have a Frankie done. You can paint it." And I immediately went right to John. I was like, "John can do this." And I don't know if he had, I don't want to put anybody on the spot and say you got to, got it by this deadline. But I hooked them both up, and I said, "Hey, here's this is the guy that did mine, and he's just a great guy. He's everybody, all these guys out here are just great people. It's hard to pinpoint something, but I really hope John does Jeremy's Frankie, because I don't think anybody would be disappointed. But I want to say one thing about Jerry. About a year and a half ago, I was looking for an updated VH1 guitar, and Jerry is one of those guys that I'm like, "Hey, I want that." "No, it's not for sale." "No." I'm like, "All right." I'm like, a couple days ago, "Jerry, no, it's not for sale." Sure enough, by a month later, he's like, "Hey, do you still want that?" Jerry's so funny. He is like outfitted so much of my collection. But anyways, I got this VH1 from him. It's on the wall. It's absolutely amazing. I love it. Classic Jerry work. One of the heavyweights in the EVH stuff. Got me into all this. And he told me, he goes, "Hey, I'm going to tell you one thing. The neck has a little bit of a back bow to it, and it's got a little bit of a twist. So I don't, I just want you to know about that. If you don't want me, no, I'll take it." So I got it, and I got it kind of playable. But the temperature, up here in New England is up and down. Winter it's super cold, and summer it's super hot. We got air conditioners, we got wood stoves, we got all that stuff. So we do the best we can. But I didn't touch the guitar for almost 9 months. Didn't touch it. And I went to pick it up a few weeks ago, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like the strings are just like laying on the frets. And no matter what I did to the truss rod, and I know how to set guitars up to my liking, I could not get it playable. And, it just was what it was. And it was exactly what Jerry said. So I reach out to our good friend Donny Ward, Vestige Guitars, and I said, "Hey, can you make me a neck?" He goes, "Yeah, what do you need?" I told him. It's like 8 hours later, and it is complete. And this thing came in yesterday, and my weekend project is going to be getting this on the guitar, setting it up, installing the hardware. I have a Gibson logo. This thing is absolutely like butter. My wife looked at it yesterday when it came in. I even have the brass nut I'm going to put in. And she doesn't play guitar, but she was like, "Whoa, this thing is like smooth." And then she's doing this, and I'm like, "Whoa, I got another idea." But we'll talk about that later. But anyways, I got to say, this thing is absolutely incredible. I can't wait to put this together. You did not disappoint. And I looked up, Donnie and I chatting again today, and another little project that I asked for, and Donnie just doesn't like that. So, what do you got there, Donnie?
Well, this is Dimitri's Wolfgang, but we'll talk about this real quick. I was showing him earlier, but Rob needed an 84 two-star neck, and the lock the lock catalog, even though it's not, you can't go on the site and buy an 84 replica neck. You can buy a 5150 replica neck and indicate which headstock you want. We've done a couple of these. I did one for Dave actually when he was still around, and I think he was the first one I did one for. And so we had it in the catalog, but Rob came to me and he's like, obviously Rob wants it to be right, and we want it to be right too. So he brought me some photos and said, like, can you take these into account? So of course I loaded them into CAD, and I just kind of looked at what I had and compared tuner sizes. Now, the benefit when we do these headstocks is, thanks to guys like Mike, we actually have the original parts that we can measure and make CAD drawings of to kind of see how they're going to fit on the neck before we cut it out. So, I kind of reevaluated what we had, and this is what we came up with. And I made the blank this morning and cut it this afternoon, and now tonight you feast your eyes on this beauty. So this is going to go out in the mail to Rob tomorrow. In fact, I got the somewhere over here. I got the label for it to send it out UPS.
I cannot wait.
Yeah, well, no, it's cool because like I told you, Rob. I'm at a position personally, not to get too into this like the weeds here, but like I'm at a position where I have I'm young, obviously. I have a lot of energy to work and get a lot of things done. So especially when a good friend like you or Dimitri or any of you guys come to me like, hey, can we get something done? Can we get a body or a neck made? And I've got Mike's Hot for Teacher body here. We were on the tuners that I brought out earlier. We worked out a deal where he gets
That's
a body.
awesome.
And so yeah, when you guys come to me like, hey, can we get something made? And this goes for anyone in the chat who's looking for necks or bodies or whatnot. I'm just eager to work, man. Maybe I can point the camera at all the stacks of wood I have in here on my wall or my So basically, I'm excited when you come to me and you're like, let's make a neck, and I just give it a shot and do it because it's fun, man. It's not a job for me. It's just my hobby, but it happens to pay my bills. So thank you for indulging my craziness.
Well, like I said, it's one of those things where, yeah, I get something in my brain. I want to do this, and like everything I've ever done in my life, it's a double-edged sword. I do everything 120. I just go.
Yeah.
Everything I do. And it's great in one sense, and in another sense, it's like it's got its drawbacks too. But
Yes.
I will not stop until I get what I want. And I mean, Jimmy, you and I, we've been martial artists for, I think I've been doing it almost 40 years, and you as well. I mean, it was it was the same thing for me in that. I get something in my head. It's my passion. I devote my life to it. And a part of my life has been building these guitars.
What he's saying, we got mental problems.
Yeah, we are idiots, as Jerry likes to say. We're idiots.
Idiots, yeah.
Idiots. I want to help out my friends. Donny and I have been friends for a long time. And hey, if I can give you business, if we can put a show together and get you more business, and that goes for all my friends that I'm in this to help other people out too. It's not just so I can, build this collection. I mean, that's so much fun, but I cannot say enough about this whole community, about everybody. Mike, you and I are shooting messages back and forth, joking with each other. You're up in Montana for the holidays. You're sending me pictures, and I'm showing you we got 19 feet of snow here, and it's just a good community, and it's so much more than just a Van Halen piece. But I cannot say how amazed I am when I go to Donny or somebody, Donny specifically, and I'm like, hey, can you do this? Yeah, what do you want? Boom, 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 boom. 8 hours later, hey, I'm shipping tomorrow. I'm like, whoa, I don't even have the cash yet. But,
Yeah.
it's
That's not typical, though. Don't be expecting that every time, though.
Yeah, it isn't. It certainly isn't every time, and I can get hung up depending on if it's something that's not really I'm not crazy about, but I took it on. I go quick for you guys because you guys bring me the stuff that I really like. You guys come to me like I want to build this, and it's like that just instantly sets alarm bells off in my head because it's like that's what I want to do too. Like that's fun. Yeah. So if I have the material on hand, it's like, oh, there we go. I'll just take that poplar blank out and cut it, or I'll take that bird's eye blank out and cut it. So it kind of for the most part, I'm quick. I'm notoriously fast, even if you're an average.
I was very, very surprised how quick you've gotten some things to me. I'm like, phew.
Yeah, well, I mean, I will say I'm always surprised when I ask you if you got something in stock, and you're like, "Yep, got it right here. I'll get it to you." And then it's
I try to keep a good inventory of certain things. I'm getting to the point where I'm forgetting even what I have because I don't put everything up. Sometimes I'll take my time. I like to clean everything too. So some people don't really want that because that stuff was funky. But yeah, it's just it's fun getting backed up with your with your stuff when you like doing it.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
what
So
I was going to ask you something about. Oh yeah. So do you kind of pre-build certain things? You're going to be making 5150 next for the rest of the foreseeable future. So do you kind of prepare for certain things like that and
for
get
the
things?
for the 5150 next, I do always keep prefabricated wings. So
Yeah.
this part, and the plugs. The neck blanks, I prep the neck blanks as needed. So if someone orders one or Lock places an order, I'll pull a 4x30 blank and prep it, get it jointed so it's flat and plain to the right thickness, and then machine it for the wings. But I like to keep wings, truss rods, filler strips, all that stuff ready so that if I need to make these because they're my biggest seller, I can kind of pop it out. But for the most part, no, I don't keep a lot stocked. If you look back here, that top shelf of necks is all stuff that's done for sale. And the second shelf is 2 bodies and then a couple beak necks that I'm prepping. There's a shark on the table there. That's for Chris. So I do, I keep some stuff in stock, but I for the most part, it's all made to order.
Right. Yeah. I try to do that too. It's like I'll do a run of the whale tail bars or something like that. I'll do a run of every bar I get will make 4 and then 8. So I'll cut them out. I'll get it at a certain point, and then it's like, well, if you want an FRT1, I'll bend it this way. If you want an FRT5, I'll bend it that way. Just try to keep things kind of, the older and older I get, the more I don't want to, be working, I guess. So it's like I'll just get things done right now at a certain point, and then when I finally get the order, then I'll finally do it. And some of it's hard to keep in stock though. But
something else you can probably appreciate about machining or having parts machined and making them is that when I cut stuff out for, say, when I did the Rockingers, when you get a plate of brass, or if you're doing Floyd's steel or whatever, one block might make, or likely will make, more than one. So when you're making these things, you might end up with like 3 parts of this piece and then 5 parts of that piece and 8 parts of that piece, depending on the size of the blank. So in that parts organizer back there, I've got probably like 2.5 Rockingers worth of parts, but some stuff for a Rockinger, or some stuff for one full, and then just extra parts for another one if I want to get. So you kind of get mismatched with how many parts you end up with. So I can go put half of a Rockinger together, and then if I want to finish it off, I have to order a certain plate of brass and do that part. So that's why I have that many little. I'm sure you probably have even more in terms of little parts organizers to keep your shit. There's always something kicking around there that's interesting. If I need to pull,
I'm a bad guy. I put things in baggies.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know why. I have containers and baggies and
yeah.
I used to put things in baggies, and that worked for me. But this is real good because I got the bench there with all the tools and this little 90-degree caddy corner so that I can kind of swivel between the two. So I'm swiveling between that cabinet there with some books and glues and steel wool and stuff, and then all the tools laid out, and then where I actually work on the guitars with nice lighting, so I can just kind of swivel back and forth. And then the parts are all right there on the wall. That was more or less devised for me to assemble the FU tone guitars and the Coletti guitars, the things that I'm assembling OEM for companies. It's not so much for the Van Halen stuff, but it comes in handy when you're putting together so many guitars, to have that setup. And Dimitri has a great setup too. I've been to his house a couple times and seen his setup. Yeah. When you do enough of this, you just, by necessity, you have to have the right shit laid out so you can get it done.
All right, I got a question for everybody. And then I got one more topic. We're a little bit over, but that's all right. We're geeking out. We could go on with this all night. I wish I could. I want to ask you folks. Thank you, Dave. I want to ask folks if they have an idea, you 4 or you 3, excuse me. What would your number one, Mike? We're going to give you some business here. You got some homework to do. What guitar part, could be a bridge, it could be any little piece that we need for one of our builds. What part or project would you be looking for a build? I know that I've been looking for a Mighty Mite bridge. Because Donnie, one of these days I want you to do that Women in Love Strat for me with again, electro neck. What would everybody's piece be that they want? Like, what do you want? What are we looking for? Donnie, what are you on the hunt for?
Well, it's not fair to say because it's something that will probably never be attainable, but it's an unlimited source of double tab shallers in any plating or size, or because that those are just going up and up, and there's a lot of double tabs out there. But when you start to get to the niche stuff like the gold treble ones I brought out, I mean, I've been on the lookout for years and years and years. I've never even seen a set of them. I know Mike's probably seen more because he's looking more than I am, but they're so rare for them to pop up, and there's so many, not that many, but there's many guys like us out here who need them. I mean, sometimes multiple sets, because Ed had them. If you do the Women of Love Strat and you do the early when the star was still white with a stock tremolo, all those had those treble side double taps. I mean, even his 58 burst had the golden chrome double tap. So anyway, the tuners are a cop out, but other than that, it would probably be FRT1 and FRT3, stuff like that.
I ask myself all the time, how did I know back in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, this kind of stuff, double tabs, string retainers, all that stuff, they were more prevalent than now. But is it just me, or did Ed always have the most rare shit on his guitars? He had the string tree on the 5150. You can't find those freaking things. Mike, I know you got them. You found a real one.
I found 2 of them in a bag full of random shit.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But he had double tabs on all these guitars back in those days. How, you can't find that stuff. String retainers. I mean, we can find them here and there, and we have them for our builds. But it's just crazy. I don't get it. One of the things I want to do is on my Dragon Snake, this is Jeff Rich made this guitar for me. Well, I built it, but he painted it. He did an amazing job. And on the back, instead of it saying John Sterry, I had it say Jeff Rich because I wanted to give him the credit. But I kind of did a hybrid. I took a Floyd Rose FRT1 style, one of the newer ones, and I turned it into like a Charville V-Trem Mighty Mike kind of, mix match parts. And I did with a black headstock and the original B with a Floyd. But I want to do the 3x3 left and right Schaller double tabs, and I just can't find another set of them. So that's what I'm looking for. How about you, Jimmy?
You know what? I have to look at my PX because one of the guys I get a lot of my parts from too is a guy named Mark Blankenship. I don't know if you guys know him.
Yeah, Mark's awesome.
He has a lot of different parts, and lately I've been dipping into his stash, and he seems to have a lot of things available, including double taps. By the way, if you want to reach out to him, he can probably get you. I don't know about the gold ones. He had one on sale just recently, but it was quite a bit of money. I think it was like in the 500 range.
Mark's great guy.
So. I can't think of anything offhand because I don't have any ongoing project. Well, I do have one unpainted Frankie right now, but I still don't know what I'm going to do with it. The double taps are always, whenever I see them, I grab them. But fortunately, I was able to grab them like many years ago when nobody seemed too interested in them.
They were $60 a set back then.
And then the same thing with the vintage Floyds. I remember like 12, 13 years ago, I was grabbing them for like 170. Now they're hitting like 300, 350. And that's just the bridge. Sometimes just the bridge without even the bar. But I'm glad actually, those are some that the gold chevrons.
Yeah,
I'm still trying to find those actually.
Yeah, they're hard to find. It's another Donny neck right here.
Yeah, it's actually for this guitar, which Donny made, both the neck and body on this one. Right now, I have chrome ones on there.
Oh wow!
But the real one had of course gold.
What guitar? Oh, look at that! Wow.
That's the Strat head neck from when you sent me your original?
Yes.
I duplicated? Okay.
Donny, I have the, hold on, I have the neck here. This is my, whoops. All right. There goes my set.
I remember that neck, this neck was on a Jim Duffy replica, and Jim was claiming that was Ed's original 82 Pacer neck.
You know, what it was is my original 82 Kramer special, the Pacer special that I talked about before, the cream one.
Yeah.
So, but
Is
yeah,
that the one Darren had, or
Yes, yep. That's the one Darren made the video about.
yes.
oh, okay.
Daryl, it came full circle. I think James Duffy sold it to Darren, and then Darren, when he found out it was my original neck, he actually sent it back to me free of charge.
Okay, yeah, I think you just
Nice
wanted
thing to
that.
do.
James.
What a guy, Darren. What a
I
guy.
love Darren. I wish he wasn't so tied up with that nail salon and we could still talk nerds.
He's one of the only guys I've met in person. He's come to Vegas a couple times, and we've hung out. And one of the only Van Halen connection guys at face to face.
Darren,
Jason
nail
Romero
salon
also, because he
for-
lives in
he's like a nail salon mogul.
Yeah.
Jason
We've
lives
had
in
different
Vegas too. So.
conversations. He's a good guy.
He's-
Um,
Sorry about that, guys.
Darren, that's the worst. I couldn't do that if I tried.
yeah, right. Mike, how about you? What is? Oh, go ahead. Keep going, Jimmy. Keep going.
So this neck went through a lot. Not from me. I think James Duffy spilled wine on it. It was in the trunk of his car. It's completely done. The truss rod is finished. It's totally bowed. I tried to install it on a guitar. It just won't work. I mean, Donnie could probably fix it, but it would involve taking out the gunter strap and replacing everything. And why do that when he just built me a clone of this neck, basically, that you saw on the other guitar? So
That's a good question, Donnie. Is our necks fixable with super back bows and twists? Can you fix that?
it is, but it's worth a lot of effort, right, Don?
Yeah, my take has always been yes, but I have a guitar manufacturing outfit in my backyard, my workshop in the yard.
Yeah.
So I'd much sooner walk out there and make a new neck that's exactly the same.
Right.
In fact, on my
Wood has memory.
yes,
It wants to remember. Yeah.
especially what you see a lot is if guitars are left under string tension and have water damage or are in very humid environments, the strings will allow that wood to creep forward and they'll hold that set in a forward bow, but they can also do it in a backward bow, and there's all sorts of directions the wood can move. There's tons of internal stresses in the wood, even when we're making necks. As you sever the fibers between the waist stock of the board and what becomes the neck, everything's going to shift because all these internal stresses are now under different tensions. So anyway, to get back to the question, I'm much sooner going to replace the neck than to try to fix it and just save the original neck for resale, or if someone comes along and wants it fixed. Like my 82 Pacer Special the frets had been leveled instead of the neck being straightened. So like the first fret, there's barely any material left. So instead of dealing with the neck or even refretting it, I just made a new neck and saved the other one. I got it somewhere on the shelf over there. So that's my philosophy. If it's a very valuable vintage guitar, it would be worth saving. That's why they do that on old Les Pauls and old pre-CBS Fender and stuff. But for the kind of Kramer stuff we're dealing with, it makes a lot, and boogie bodies even, it makes a lot more sense just to make a new one.
So that makes me ask, I think one of the only necks that we might, Donnie and I were joking about this last night. This is the guitar I got from Gary, and it's freaking amazing. He did just an awesome job on this thing. I love it. This is the neck that will be getting replaced this weekend. And I have a purpose for that Donnie and I kind of came up with. And we are calling it I'm not going to get rid of it. But this would be one of those necks, Donnie, if it was, could you replace Ed's original? Could you fix it? I know it's got the Floyd route.
Yeah, I think it could be fixed and saved, sure, unless the neck was so warped and bowed that in addition to the Floyd shelf. But the Floyd shelf itself, you could just build up a new route. Real quick, while I have the stage, I saw Jim Shine mentioned earlier he needs the long boogie bodies adjusters. I might be able to help you with that. I've done it in brass before, and it's worked. And Mike could probably get those made too. They're just like longer versions of the slotted truss nuts. And Ben Tom asked if I could duplicate a 69 Strat neck, and that is an absolute yes. I could do it without the original, but if you could send me the original to actually measure, I could certainly do that.
Hey, by the way, Darren is on here, right? The guitar.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's Darren,
Yeah.
What's up, Darren? How you doing, buddy?
What do you say? Get
Go ahead.
the mentally please 50 women today. You're too drained for videos. You poor bastard.
Yeah, right. So this neck right here, rather than just discarding it, this is going to turn into. Oh, by the way, the tuners are. I mean, everything is. It's got the drop.
The tuners.
What do you call it? The deep shaped drop tabs. This neck is going to become a replica of what Donnie and I call the pant snake neck.
Yeah, I can actually pull up the picture while we're talking about it. And
The
share
picture of Ed in 1980,
right.
when they tried to drill the Floyd out, the Floyd nut, screwed it up, and he's got it sticking out of his pants, so we call it the pant snake neck. So this will be a wall hanger, and it will get put to good use, Jerry. Don't worry about it. And this will be on this this guitar this weekend.
Rob, if you pull up my screen share here, I can show for the viewers at home.
So we're calling this the
Hey, Don,
pant.
wasn't the original neck still 150?
Well, the original neck was saved by presumably by Chip. It was to be thrown away. I've heard that it was in a box that said "burn" on it. So Chip, I guess when he was doing the master build, I've heard that he yanked that and they saved it, and they did pattern the master build 78 eruption after that neck. So that's what Rob's gonna do with his neck. It's just chisel the shelf in and stick it on the wall here, which is pretty cool.
Put some old jeans on the wall too, and have it coming out.
Yeah. It's going to be the pant snake neck.
Go ahead and put a 58 burst up there while you're at it. I mean,
right. I got a Chipson Les Paul, and it was.
Is that one you got from Norm?
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah.
One of the twos you got from Norm.
Yeah, that's the 58 with the plain faded top. That he actually put the Shallers, the half chrome, half gold, the other half shark set on that guitar.
I didn't know that. Huh.
Yeah, so and he didn't put the screws in, so the tuners are all crooked.
Yeah. He pulled
Well, at least he didn't put the.
too, didn't he?
He did what?
He pulled the bridge humbucker out. Just had the neck pickup in it.
That was the
No,
59.
he pulled the neck out, I think.
Well, he pulled the bridge out of the 59 after the album had been recorded. But when he brought the 58 on tour, he at the very beginning of the tour, the neck pickup was still in there, and then he yanked the neck pickup, and it actually ended up in the B. You can see photos in like late 81 or early 82 where the B has a covered humbucker, and it's presumably that pickup. But it eventually made it back into the burst, and the burst got the. I'm looking at a picture now where he had take the jack plate off, and he's got the jack held in place with duct tape or gaffer tape on his 58 burst that he paid $5,000 for.
Yeah.
So Ed was a funny guy, but experimenting on a 58 burst.
Mike, what is the piece of equipment, gear, come on, Byron, that you would be looking for? What's the one piece that you are on the hunt for?
That would have to be the Nady Nasty Wireless.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that. It's got to go to me, though. It's got to go to me. I check Reverb and eBay every freaking day.
Yeah, I know. You know what? To be honest with you, I kind of have pretty much everything. If I were to build a replica of the B or the Frankie or the 5150, which are my main three, I kind of have everything. I got probably the hardest one out of all that, or the one that I've only seen one or two of, was the DiMarzio, the Mighty Mite red phenolic pickup. I've seen two of those for sale, and I got one of them somehow. And
Donnie has one.
Who?
Donnie has one, I think.
No, I don't. No, Sean had one.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So then there's three that I know of, but probably just more of certain things that people like. I keep certain things for myself that are keepers.
Yeah.
I got a collection of Floyds that I really like, and once I get bored of them, I'll sell them off at certain points. But for the most part, I mean, it would be nice to have everything done. You can get all the parts you want, but you need somebody to do them or paint them, and it's not looking like.
Mike, who painted that roster behind you?
That would be my buddy Jerry.
Oh, of course. Jerry.
He's awesome.
Yes, Jerry has a distinction of having been the guy who's painted the most rosters anywhere in the world. I guarantee you that.
He's, that's one of his, specialties, and that's the only striped guitar I have done because,
Yeah,
Jerry did the
to me, it's one of
painting.
the coolest ones.
Yeah,
I was
that was never on my radar, but once you talk to Jerry and, he puts the Rasta in your head, you're like, oh, that's just,
Oh, crazy.
no, he was very. We traded some stuff on it, and
Yeah.
but that's got. I can finally show off a guitar that has some.
Yeah, please do.
So it's got the double tabs.
Yep.
It's got a.
Oh, you got the version where he played it in the tour. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't want to do the Dweezil
You
version.
got the Kramer ad Frank bridge on it. No
Yeah.
logo.
So this has the gold 4508 nut, stainless steel retainer. It's got the Shallower hot stuff, and just like the one you have on your ad guitar, I think. Right?
Yeah,
no logo, prototype.
Yeah.
that is awesome.
Shielding in there.
Yeah, it's a great job.
But yeah, that's the only striped one I have.
That's awesome.
But of course, I got bodies and necks over here that are just waiting for something, and I got another one coming from Donny that is going to go on the rack over there, and maybe one day get built. Who knows?
When I spent some time with Dweezil a couple weeks ago because I'm building something for him, and he invited me out to the show and hang, sound check and all that. So I brought him this to show off because it's kind of the sister to the Rasta. And obviously, since he had the Rasta, it's kind of cool to get his reaction. I found it funny. The first thing he said when he saw this, he's like, "Oh, that's backwards." He was confused by it. I'm like, "Oh, well, you didn't know the Rasta was backwards too?" And he's like, "No, I never knew that." So he signed it. You can barely see it, but he played this for a bit and he signed it for me. That's pretty cool. But yeah, I just thought it was like the right thing. If I'm going to bring him a guitar, I didn't have a Rasta, but I thought that being the sister to it, he'd get a kick out of it. That's pretty cool.
That's
cool.
awesome.
Really nice guy. Really sweet guy.
Yeah, he's his channel, his webpage, Running with the Dweezil was great. I mean, I've listened to all those, and him and I chatted a little bit back and forth, and he saw some of my guitars. He was pretty pumped up about it. We never really went anywhere from that, but yeah, I'd love to reconnect with him sometime.
He seems to want to do a video on the guitar we're building for him, which would be cool to see.
Oh, nice. That's cool, Donny.
So I took a bunch of footage of making the body and neck, so we'll see how that comes out.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. Hey, so when you're like me and you can't find gold Schaller double tabs for your Shark unless you pay $600, which I finally succumbed after all these years. And then Mike has them up on his page 2 weeks later. No, we're talking about the Schaller double tabs, the gold ones.
Yeah. They just came. My God.
What did Ed say to Jazz Obrit years ago in '82? He goes, "If I can't find a way to do what I'm trying to do, I'll cheat, and I'll do whatever I have to." So, in order to get a nasty cordless, which people that don't know what this is, this was a John Nady cordless unit. The first one, now they just say Nady Systems. This is an original logo. This is a Nady cordless unit, but it's not quite the right size, a little smaller. And I took it to my bench grinder and I ground down the corners and everything, painted it blue. This is a screw actually on the top. And this is that's a Floyd Rose bar collar. And down here is that's a toggle switch, and this is a strap button. And I just taped it on my my banjo strap, which 51. And if I can't find out how to do something, I can't find it, I'll just make one. But this is not going to be anywhere as cool as what Mike is going to do for me.
Honestly, it looks like I should call the bomb squad. It comes up.
Yeah, right.
Don't show up at the Orlando airport.
Got the logo and put it on there. Scott Smith has a real one, and I've seen his, and it's just really cool. But I cannot understand how they're just not out there. And if you go on Reverb and you type it in, you'll find one from 3 years ago that sold for $42 with a transmitter and everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
That's the only one that has there's pictures of. That's the only one that you'll see ever.
Right. Well, if you talk to Scott, Mike, like I told you, he'll give you the dimensions of his real one.
I did. He hasn't gone back to me yet.
Yeah. It's just kind of cool. I mean, if the research that I've done, and I even talked to Navy Systems, I talked to the company, and they don't even have one in their in their in their workshop. They don't even have one. But from what I've heard is they basically they're awful. They don't even work that well. They didn't work great. But it's more of a collection thing. So just kind of one thing that I'm looking for, but kind of good stuff,
There's always that extra part that you need to track down, no matter what our collection.
Always got to be something.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're way over, but last thing I just wanted to mention, and I'm going to give a little credit to Period Correct Guitar Parts because they went above and beyond like they always do. The 1984.
You just asked too many times, and then no, just kidding.
Yeah, right. Yeah, seriously.
Above and beyond.
I don't feel like getting up and getting my replica off the wall, but the 1984 Kramer that Ed played in the 1984 tour with the gold hardware, had a whale tail on it, had this neck, which is going to be upgraded by Donny here, which just was, with the 2 stars. Is a really cool guitar, and a lot of us have replicas. Jimmy, you have the 1984 version. Do you have that handy?
Yeah.
Well, Jimmy's grabbing that. In 1984, Ed played. That was his backup Kramer, and it had 1984 space tape on it. They put that on probably quarter of the way through the tour, and it had this neck on it, and I'm sure Jimmy's is exact.
No, it's not. Actually, it's a music craft neck, and it's not exact. The tuners are way too close to each other, and the headstock shape is wrong. But I mean, it
still looks awesome though. Looks awesome. So in 1984, Ed played that guitar on some different songs, and if you look at the Van Halen Lost Weekend video footage with a great guy, Kurt Jeffries, who's a friend of mine. He's on Facebook, and he's actually been on our show when I did a show with Johnny Bean years ago. Great stories. Anyways, Ed plays Ain't Talking About Love on that guitar. And then after the 84 tour, 1985, Ed and Val are at the Hard Rock Cafe, and they donate a guitar. And that's where this comes in. This is the 85 Hard Rock guitar. And Ed says that it's his number 2 backup. Well, he's half right. It's the number 2. And Jimmy, you're the one that advised me of this years and years ago.
Well,
it's actually the neck off the original 84.
Yeah.
But the body is something totally different. And Ed says, I wanted to give him something that I played. So really cool. Go ahead, Jimmy. You're going to say something?
No, if you remember, there was, I don't know if it was a Guitar World or Guitar Player magazine where the guitarist from
Weezer,
yeah,
was actually holding it, and you could see, he's holding it like this, and you can clearly see and that's the first time I saw that, the 1984 neck had been put on that Hard Rock giveaway guitar. That's how I put it together.
Italy now? It's in Italy, right? I think it's in Italy. Hard Rock.
Yeah, it moves around all the time, but yeah, I think you're right. It is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guitar has a fascinating history too.
It's great.
Yeah.
So basically, the 1984 neck original went on the 85 Hard Rock Kramer that Val and Ed donated, and the original 1984 body ended up with the replacement neck, which looks similar to the 5150 and has black hardware on it. Well, chrome tuners, black retainer, black retainer and black nut, and a black Floyd. And then Ed used that for Good Enough with a bass string and 5150 tour Took it on tour in 1988, although there's no footage of Ed playing it in '88, an OU 812 tour, but it was on tour. And Wolfgang owns it now. And really cool guitar. At some point years ago, folks thought that the serial number on that guitar, on the original 84, was B4186. And there was folks like, I think Dave Westcott from Frets on the Net that were making neck plates. Great guy, great. I bought neck plates from him. And then Mr. McGuire comes along from Period Correct Guitar Parts, and he's making not aluminum plates, he's making real steel frame plates, right on the money. And Mike was making B4186 plates for 1984 Kramers. Well, if we go to a Young Guitar magazine, we see that the one of the write-ups is B4125 is what the neck plate is. And if you really look at the picture, I see a B4125. Now, I don't know where the B4186 number came from. Folks just threw that out years and years ago, and we all thought that the 1984 Kramer had that. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But in my experience over the years, Young Guitar does not. They're gear people, like you said way earlier. I believe that the 1984 Kramer was B4125 based off of that. So I contact my good friend Mike a couple of years ago, whatever it was. Hey, Mike, here's, he'd already been on top of it. And I said, I want a B4125 neck plate. I'm already on top of it. So I put that on my 1984 Kramer. But I had this B4186 neck plate. What am I going to do with this? Well, there's a little bit of who knows what happened. So what better guitar to put it on than the 1985 hard rock guitar, because that's where the original neck went. Is that what the serial number is on this guitar over in the hard rock in Italy right now? I don't know, but I had nothing else to do with that plate, so that's where it ended up. And I would urge our fellow Van Halen fans to do the same if we're going to do one of these, unless we get other information.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, well, Mike did the same for me when I was tracking down, trying to figure out what the serial was on that double neck, and it was clearly an A serial. If you can get a good picture of the back, it was the end of the A serial, which makes sense timeline wise anyway. But a picture came through from the photos that were taken for Guitar Aficionado in 2013, and that was one of the guitars that was photographed.
Yeah,
I was lucky enough to be given it was cropped so that I didn't have the whole thing, but it was just of that neck plate. To see the serial, it was clearly A9555. So it was one of the very last A serial neck plates they had for that double neck, which that double neck really was the first, I think the double neck and the white and black striped pacer were the two first guitars they did for Ed. And, so Ed had very, very late A serial guitars, including the Ad Frank was also an A serial. But it's great because, you can go to Mike and be like, hey, can you do this serial number? And he's like, yep, I got a blank, stamp it, and then that's that. So then you can get whatever you want.
And that's where the Young Guitar thing comes in the play too, because they also had that same number, I believe, in their magazine, right?
For which one?
For the double neck. Yeah,
I didn't have this. Someone sent this to me and told me rip every page out and scan it so we have high res copies of it. I haven't gotten around to that yet, but I didn't have the benefit of this until after I already got that photo confirmed.
I think I found it and sent it to you, and then we're like, well, we're waiting for those pictures to come in, and then it was confirmed that it was. So that's another reason why I think the 125 instead of the 186 for the 84 was probably probably correct.
They were definitely looking at this stuff under magnifying glasses and whatnot.
Yeah. And that's where those, the player magazines, Young Guitar magazines, the EVH Guitar Man books, magazines, those are just the best. They have the best information.
They're more like books, man. Some of them are thick. I mean, there's so nice to have. Well, like you said, I think you either have one to really look through than one to keep,
Yeah.
Real nice.
Yeah, for sure. Well, gentlemen, we are at 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Really pushing it, aren't we?
Yeah, I know. We're only 45 minutes late. That's why I say when I go to work every morning. Jimmy, you and I have been in, well, for the last 4 years, I've been out of law enforcement, but there's no such thing as being late in our
No, not civil service, man. You can't be late.
no, you better be 10 minutes early at least. But, I want to say some of the comments that I've seen in the chat, I think we've blown a whole bunch of people's minds. There's people that just have said brain overload with what we've been talking about. I would really love to do this again with you guys. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time, Donnie, your friendship, what you've done for me over the years, and I'm excited for this new neck. Jimmy, you and I have been been tight for many, many, many years, and I'm so glad I finally got you on the channel.
So
Mike,
great vision.
well, let's do it again. And Mike, I'm glad to have you on my show, and you and I talk all the time, and I really appreciate all the work you've done for me and what you do for the Van Halen community. Please keep up the good work, all you guys. We are what makes this whole community, prosper and have fun. Let's just keep the spirit alive. Everybody in the chat, I want to say I love you guys. I appreciate you watching. I hadn't done a lot of shows in the past, just been busy with life and getting married and new house and all this other stuff. I'm going to try to do some more shows. You guys let me know what you want to see. I'm more than welcome and open to have any of these guys on the show anytime. Definitely want to do it again, but if you guys want to see a specific guitar, you want to talk about something, let me know and we'll do a show on it. Cobra Kai Platoon says, will you guys please, for the love of God, write a book about the evolution of the Frankenstein? Another
people are working on it. I'll just say that much.
Yeah, totally. As a Van Halen fan, we miss Eddie so much. But I will say the spirit is not dead. Even though they're not making more albums, we got Wolfgang, who's just totally kicking ass. I love his new music. I love what he did when he was with Van Halen. And stand by, guys, because there's more stuff coming out. There's going to be more releases from the band. It's great to see Alex out there. It's great to see Mike, Sammy. It's just awesome. Even Gary Sharon pokes his head out once in a while and and has stuff to say. It's awesome. Being a fan is not going to get boring. I promise you that. And for guys like Jimmy and Donnie and Mike and many others, they're going to keep the spirit alive. Thank you for watching, you guys. Mike, Donnie, Jimmy, don't hang up. Really appreciate it. I apologize if we didn't get to everybody's questions tonight. We just had a whole bunch of stuff to go through, and we dragged it out for 2 hours and 45 minutes. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. We'll do more, and keep the Van Halen spirit alive, guys. Mike, thank you.
Yeah.
On.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Donnie, thank you for being on again, buddy.
It's a pleasure. My pleasure.
And Jimmy, thank you for being on. I appreciate it. Let's catch up soon.
All right, man. Definitely. Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody. Love you.
Thanks, guys.
Stay safe.